Chapter 1382. The Terrifying One Divine Martial. A few days ago, something unexpected had interrupted the battle of geniuses. Great Emperor Shuiyang had personally come to Heavenly God City to escort Shuimo back to the Sea of Innocence. At the same time, he'd ordered that no one was allowed to leave the Divine Martial Academy. That day, the participants of the Battle of Geniuses felt the Emperor's wrath erupt like a volcano. However, they also knew that Shuiyang was angry at the person who'd injured his daughter. If he wanted to cause trouble, he'd cause trouble for the person who'd injured her. Practically everyone started mourning that unruly youth, but to their surprise, that youth left the Divine Martial Academy unscathed and returned to the clan. Later, they received word that no one was allowed to speak of this matter, and they were even placed under house arrest. They were clearly innocent, yet they'd been put under house arrest and threatened. The true culprit was bailed out and returned to the clan unscathed. This infuriated quite a few participants, but in the face of the combined pressure of the Central Divine Mountain and Northern Divine Mountain, all they could do was obediently endure. As for anti-upheaval, Shuiyang took them with him to the Sea of Innocence. Murong Shui and the others might be able to do it, but anti-upheaval was different. Their relationship with Shuimo was qualitatively different from the other student societies. If they saw Yi Zichen, they'd definitely tell him everything. To avoid that possibility, Shuiyang had to take them away. As for Murong Shui and the others, they could enter the Divine Martial Academy as they pleased because of Shuiyang's authorization. Their goal was simple: keep an eye on Yi Zichen. They couldn't let him take even half a step into the Divine Martial Academy. Although the Central Divine Mountain and Sea of Innocence had already put pressure on them, no one could guarantee that they'd be able to keep their mouths shut. They didn't know why Shuiyang wanted them to do this, but that was what they were thinking, so they agreed. That was how that scene from last night in the tavern had come about. However, there was one person among them who hadn't participated in the deception: Jiang Wei. He'd made it clear that he didn't want to participate, but he also promised not to tell Yi Zichen about Shuimo. At the time, Jiang Yong and the others hadn't insisted, but now. Jiang Wei, I know you disdain lying, but you really have to help us. Inside the room, Jiang Yong frowned deeply as he tried to persuade Jiang Wei, who was hugging his rusted sword without opening his eyes. This was the only method Jiang Yong could think of. He understood Jiang Wei's personality, and so did Yi Zichen. If they could get Jiang Wei to step forward, even Yi Zichen, who suspected them, would believe them. This was because Jiang Wei's personality was just like that. He was very arrogant, so arrogant that he disdained telling lies. Our performance last night was a little over the top. Brother Yi saw something fishy. Shui Bebe told Shui that Brother Yi is already suspecting us, and that he's already returned to Heavenly God City. No matter what Jiang Yong said, Jiang Wei sat there like a block of wood, hugging his rusted sword. Brother, say something, the fire is burning our eyebrows. You were also there that day. What do you think your chances of winning are if you were to fight him? Suddenly, Jiang Wei said, 20%. I don't think so. Over the past few days, he had stayed in Divine Martial Academy to calculate his odds of winning against that person. 20%. This was the result he had arrived at, taking into account all the elements in his favor. Given Jiang Wei's personality, he really didn't want to admit the gap between him and that person. But the truth was right in front of him. If he'd been in Shuimo's place, he might have suffered even more. After all, Shuimo had unleashed the power of her bloodline. The difference in strength was too great. He sat in the stands and watched as Shuimo was heavily injured. He clenched his fists so tightly that his fingernails dug into his palms. All he could do was suppress the urge to attack and sit there, unmoving. It wasn't just him. Everyone else in Skyspan Academy felt the same way. That person was simply too terrifying, so terrifying that it surpassed the scope of anyone participating in the Battle of Geniuses' comprehension. The way Jiang Wei saw it, the only people who could compare to him were Su Lu'er, the Fox Queen, Sun Yaij, the Holy Maiden of the Nine Li, and Lu Jing, the Four Directions Palace's Highness, who'd never revealed her true strength. Or rather, he was even stronger than the other three. Jiang Yong, who'd been trying to console Jiang Wei all this time, was stunned. He admitted that person was strong, but he hadn't expected Jiang Wei to think he had less than a 20% chance of winning. That guy. If even you think you can't beat him, then what do you think Brother Yi will do? Isn't he just looking to die? If he finds out about Xue Mo's situation, he'll definitely kill that human. Do you think he'll be able to come back alive? Jiang Wei fell silent. That guy. He even dared to attack the Sea of Innocence's second daughter. Do you think they dare touch Brother Yi? And you know Brother Ye's background, the Lord of 7 Stars and the Profound Pavilion. If something happens to Brother Yi, what do you think the consequences will be? Jiang Wei suddenly opened his eyes. His hands were trembling. Jiang Yong took advantage of this moment to speak. You're right, Jiang Wei said. It's true, Jiang Wei. I know you're a proud and arrogant person who disdains telling lies like this. We also know your personality, so we didn't insist on you doing it at first. But now you're our only hope of victory, and your words determine Brother Ye's fate. We're going to kill that human's family and demand justice for Xue Mo. If anything happens to Brother Yi, the Lord of 7 Stars and the Profound Pavilion will charge straight to our gates, and the God Realm will fall into chaos. Or perhaps we can stall for time until Xue Mo wakes up, then explain things to her. Do you really think he'll believe me? Jiang Wei sighed. Besides, do you really think there's any need to be so nervous? Lady Providence is Yi Zichen's aunt, and the organizer of the Battle of Geniuses. Do you really think she'll let Yi Zichen do as he pleases? Jiang Yong had long since considered this. It wasn't just him. Murong Shui, Pang Zheng, Di Long, and the Su brothers had all considered this. If even they could think of this, how could Great Emperor Shuiyang not? And yet, the Great Emperor still wanted them to stop Yi Zichen and hide the truth from him. They hadn't thought too deeply about why, but it was absolutely necessary. As a result, Jiang Wei was still their trump card. Whether or not they could hide the truth depended on him. Jiang Yong took a deep breath, but didn't argue with Jiang Wei. Instead, he gazed at him solemnly. All you need to do is tell me whether or not you're going to help. His tone was threatening, but it also seemed like he was ready to give up. Time was of the essence. Jiang Yong didn't want to waste too much time with Jiang Wei. If his pride didn't allow him to lie like this, then leaving right now and discussing countermeasures with the others was the best choice. After a long silence, Jiang Wei nodded. Chapter 1383. Jiang Wei was convinced. Jiang Wei was convinced. Although he was extremely reluctant and didn't want to go against his heart and deceive a general, Jiang Yong's words had shaken him. If Yi Zichen found out about Xue Mo's condition, he'd absolutely seek revenge. This wasn't to say he was reckless. The way Jiang Wei saw it, there was a certain chivalrous spirit in his bones. This was true loyalty. From the moment Yi Zichen entered his line of sight, Jiang Wei had taken note of him. In his heart, he'd subconsciously viewed Yi Zichen as a rival on the path of the sword. They could compare in private and try their best to surpass each other, but neither of them wanted to see anything happen to the other. The person who'd injured Xue Mo was too strong. At the very least, he was stronger than they could handle. If Yi Zichen lost his temper and went looking for trouble with that person, he'd most likely suffer. Given his astonishing background, there was no way he'd let things slide like Great Emperor Shuiyang had. This was easy to explain. Sometimes men would think about the big picture, but most women would not be like that. The Lord of 7 Stars was Yi Zichen's mother, and the Profound Pavilion's head was his aunt. Both of them could change the fate of the entire god race with a stomp of their feet, and they were women. The god race was currently plagued with internal and external problems. If these two peak factions took action, the situation would worsen. Out of loyalty to his enemy, or for the sake of the greater good, Jiang Wei couldn't let that happen. He didn't hesitate any longer. Convinced, Jiang Wei followed Jiang Yong to the tavern outside the Divine Martial Academy. Since Yi Zichen had already returned to Heavenly God City, they couldn't waste any more time. They had to stop him before he got there. As for what they'd say when they saw him, that would be up to them. However, what they didn't know was that Yi Zichen wasn't returning to the Divine Martial Academy. Even if they knew, they absolutely wouldn't think that cooking was unnecessary. Such caution and concern were all for the sake of nipping the problem in the bud. It didn't matter where Yi Zichen was, or why he'd returned to Heavenly God City. All they had to do was do what they had to do. Meanwhile, Yi Zichen had no idea that his return had caused such a chain reaction. He was hurrying to the location Xian Ji had given him. When they arrived near the place Xian Ji had told them about, they heard a deafening roar. He looked in the direction of the sound and saw dozens of experts standing in the air, releasing their divine power with all their might. Countless buildings collapsed in front of their eyes, and the building materials left behind by the collapsed buildings were all recovered. After that, the construction team of dozens of people began the construction task in full swing. The efficiency of cultivators is indeed much higher compared to ordinary humans. In just a short while, he saw the outline of a new building begin to appear in the area where the buildings had been destroyed. At this rate, this place would be completely reconstructed in less than 3 days. Yi Zichen couldn't help but sigh. As he sighed, Lady Xian Ji flashed to his side. And at that moment, Yi Zichen put away his expression of greeting. The others simply nodded at Xian Ji. Pu Jingwan and Yang Jian were outsiders, and their statuses were rather special. Even if he was a great sage, he was now an existence that could firmly suppress Yang Jian. If he still knelt on one knee and greeted like an ordinary person in this realm, it would be unreasonable. "You got here pretty quickly," laughed Xianji. In response, Yi Zichen smiled and nodded. How could they not get here quickly? Yi Zichen's heart had been racing ever since he'd received news of Xianji's arrival. This was the most important part of his plan. What made his heart beat even faster was that the Shao family was right across from them. From now on, he'd be neighbors with the Lightning Emperor. When he'd met with Xianji, he'd asked her to help him buy a plot of land across from the Shao family and use it as Upheaval's headquarters. There were several reasons for doing this, but the most important was to put pressure on Shao Ting. Xiao Yumei and Xiao Yan were on his side. Xiao Ting was plotting treason. He definitely knew that Yi Zichen, who was protecting them, was absolutely aware of his despicable actions. Yi Zichen had purposefully set up his headquarters here so he could openly report this to Xiao Ting. "I know everything. I'm here to keep an eye on you. If you want to cause any trouble, you'd best be careful. Forget about the Emperor's plotting to betray the human race. Let's just talk about the grudge between them." That was enough for the two of them to sort things out. Setting up his headquarters here meant that Yi Zichen no longer had to be as cowardly as before. Now, he was strong enough to stand up to the Shao family, the Lightning Emperor's successor. How could Yi Zichen not be excited on such a milestone day? "Just like you said, I bought up all the land around here. Here's a list of expenses. Take a look and remember to pay me back double." She shoved a jade slip into his hands. He probed it with his divine sense, and a vast amount of information poured into his sea of consciousness. It took him a while to process it all. However, this also proved just how much Xianji had paid to buy all this land. After a few breaths of time, he finally absorbed all the information in the jade slip. When he saw the records, Yi Zichen was speechless. The expenses were terrifying, so much so that he didn't even dare calculate just how many digits he'd spent. "Don't think it's expensive. This is the territory of the divine statue. No one is willing to sell this land. You were the one who wanted to build your headquarters right across from the Shao family's residence. I had to put aside my pride and bleed profusely to buy this land. Don't forget, double. I know. Shao Ting was one of the strongest factions in Heavenly God City. His location was undoubtedly extraordinary. Before asking Xianji to buy the land, he'd already prepared himself for a huge expense. However, this expense was so great that he couldn't remain calm. Fortunately, he had the outside support, so spending even more didn't matter. All he had to do was buy the land. Before, only a few small family clans and the Skyspan Trading Company were here. In truth, the layout of the buildings is pretty good. However, considering that you're a new power, I ordered some people to renovate the place. However, the layout is according to my profound pavilions. That should be fine, right? Asked Xianji. No problem, no problem. Yi Zichen nodded. Have you torn down the Skyspan Trading Company's building? If not, don't. I'll use it. You want to build a trading company. Chapter 1384. Chapter 1384. Mutual pressure. Who else could she be referring to? Naturally, it was the infamous Lightning Emperor, Shao Ting. As soon as he said that, Yi Zichen and company saw the majestic, dignified gates of the Shao family manor across the half-hundred-meter-wide street. Shao Ting strode out like a dragon or a tiger, accompanied by his old attendant, Uncle An. Although Shao Ting was old, his steps were vigorous, and they could sense his thunderous aura as he strode forward. In just a few steps, he arrived before Yi Zichen and the others. Xianji had warned them, and they'd long since been on guard. They looked directly at the Lightning Emperor. What brings our Lightning Emperor here? I heard something happened to your family, and you expelled Shao Yan from the clan. Why aren't you at home dealing with that mess? Why do you have the time to come out for a stroll? Xianji smiled, but her words were like thorns stabbing into Shao Ting's heart. Her relationship with the Shao family hadn't been particularly harmonious. She didn't know why, but ever since she'd taken up her post in the God Realm, she'd found this old man an eyesore. Although they both worked for the God Emperor's estate, they couldn't even maintain the most basic semblance of brotherhood. On their way here, Shao Ting's heart sank further and further, because he saw Yi Zichen. It was just as Yi Zichen had guessed. The way Shao Ting saw it, he'd definitely received some unfavorable information from Xiao Yumei and Xiao Yan. Shao Ting's previous threats were, in truth, an attempt to force the two of them to divulge this matter to the public. Given his past accomplishments and his influence in the God Realm, there was no way the God Realm would trust him unconditionally. That way, he could use his status to make a false accusation, throw dirty water on Xiao Yumei and Xiao Yan, and avoid any future troubles. To his surprise, though, his son and daughter were far more composed than he'd expected. She hadn't mentioned the slightest bit of her secret dealings with the demons, and this youth had even protected her. His entire plan had gone up in smoke. Now he'd appeared here. Thunder-punishing Emperor, why are you staring at my precious nephew? I'm talking to you, but you're ignoring me. You're not giving me any face at all, are you? Xianji smiled calmly. Ha, it's nothing. I just met him once before. Shao Ting chuckled, then glanced at the renovated building across from them. It looks like our Shao family will be neighbors with the profound pavilion in the future. It must have been difficult to buy this piece of land from them. Of course. Xianji nodded. But we can't be neighbors. Your new neighbor is here, he pointed to the side. When Shao Ting looked over, Yi Zichen smiled noncommittally. Hello, let me reintroduce myself. I'm Yi Zichen, of the Upheaval Gang. Forget it. Using that name now makes me seem a little underwhelming. I'll stick with the Upheaval Alliance. Alliance leader. In the future, we will be neighbors. I hope that the thunder-punishing Emperor can help me. Even with Shao Ting's shrewdness, when he heard this news, the muscles on his face stiffened. As expected, he had said that Xianji had no reason to spend so much money to buy this land. He hadn't expected that the one who wanted to be his neighbor was this young man. What was he trying to do? Intimidate him? Xianji, you really are generous. You actually bought this place for your nephew's faction. I can't help but criticize you. At our level, we all know that your nephew is still young, yet you gave him such a high starting point. I'm happy to. Before Xiao Ting could finish, Xian Ji mercilessly cut him off. He's my only nephew. I'd be happy to spend as much as I wanted. Yet, you still want to get involved? Who do you think you are? The God Emperor? Xiao Ting's expression instantly grew cold. By now, they both knew that Xian Ji and the others knew that Xiao Ting was involved with the demons, and Xiao Ting knew that they knew. Since they didn't want to give him face, there was no need for him to give them face. Then can I ask if you're purposely trying to build a faction here because this is the best land in all of Heavenly God City. I'm buying land for my precious nephew, so I naturally have to buy the best. Is there a problem with that? Don't be so paranoid all day. Or perhaps you're just feeling guilty. Xian Ji laughed meaningfully. Xian Ji knew. Reading between the lines, Xiao Ting gleaned a bit of information. Xiao Ting narrowed his eyes and laughed, then dropped the subject. His gaze landed on Yi Zichen. My good-for-nothing son is staying with you. I hope he hasn't caused you any trouble? His name has already been erased from the family tree. What's the point of calling him son? Sneered Xian Ji. Xiao Ting pretended not to hear. Yi Zichen smiled and nodded. What trouble could there be? My family has a lot of assets. It's just taking care of a few hundred people. It's no big deal. That's true. You have the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, and your family's resources are incomparable to those of ordinary families. Since you're trying to build a faction here, as someone who's experienced it, I have to give you a few words of advice. Go ahead, said Yi Zichen. You do indeed have quite a few experts by your side. With their help and the profound pavilion's backing, your faction can rise to the ranks of first-rate factions. But your pagoda's resources will run out sooner or later. When that time comes, will the experts you've won over still be loyal to your faction? Laughed Xiao Ting. That's right, said Xiao Ting. Even now, Xiao Ting still believed that Yi Zichen's resources came from the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Yi Zichen didn't point that out. He simply smiled calmly. At the end of the day, your cultivation is too low. You're not qualified to manage a first-rate faction. Furthermore, competition in Heavenly God City is fierce. Most experts are personally nurtured by their families, or they have some other tricks up their sleeve. You don't have any of that. That was where Xiao Ting stopped. Yi Zichen couldn't deny that most of what he said made sense. Unfortunately, he'd mistakenly assumed that the 20 rulers had been recruited with resources, and he'd misunderstood his relationship with Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan. Indeed, his cultivation was too low. He couldn't become the leader of a faction on the surface. Yang Jian could. The great sage could. Pu Jingwan could too. So long as they were willing, Yi Zichen could hand over his position to any of them. Even if they didn't want to, with their support, who could deny Yi Zichen's right to lead? Yi Zichen said nothing. Xiao Ting smiled indifferently. A few days ago I met you for the first time. I already knew you were a dragon among men. Ambition is a good thing, but it's not something you can achieve overnight. There are many other things to learn, and this is Heavenly God City. Little friend, you're still young, and your talent is shallow. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll tell you everything I know. Thank you, Lightning Emperor, for your kindness. I'm eternally grateful. This sort of verbal attack was practically negligible to Yi Zichen. Was he trying to subtly pressure him? That Yi Zichen could do it too. Xiao Ting laughed, then heard Yi Zichen speak again. But Emperor, you said something wrong. You said we met for the first time a few days ago. What? Wasn't that the case? That's impossible. Given your dragon aura, so long as I saw you, I'd definitely remember you. I'd never forget. In truth, if I told you, you'd never forget either. Yi Zichen lowered his gaze and stared straight at Xiao Ting's insincere smile. Chapter 1385. Chapter 1385. The Shao family's hidden danger, it was enough to stop where it was appropriate. When Yi Zichen mentioned 100 bolts of tribulation lightning, he trusted Shao Ting would know what he meant. Shao Ting definitely hadn't expected this. That youth who'd been repeatedly prevented from entering the God realm was him. Not only had he been reborn from the ashes of tribulation lightning, but he was now standing proudly in front of Shao Ting as a challenger. Yi Zichen smiled at Shao Ting, his gaze indicating he was sending him off. Yang Jian gestured for Shao Ting to leave. He wanted to personally escort the Lightning Emperor back to the Shao family estate, which was only a few dozen meters away. Shao Ting's expression shifted, but given his shrewdness, he naturally didn't act unnaturally. No matter how shocked he was in his heart, he still maintained his composure like a deep pool of water. He didn't say anything. By now, he and Yi Zichen had a tacit understanding. They both knew each other's identities and their future relationship. Yi Zichen turned indifferently, flicked his sleeves, and left. Yang Jian personally escorted him to the Shao family estate. However, when they arrived at the gates, Shao Ting didn't shy away from chatting with Yang Jian for a long time. After entering, Shao Ting's eyes twinkled with amusement. Yang Jian nodded and bowed respectfully as he watched him enter. Look at how much of a bootlicker he is. The two of them were definitely up to no good. The great sage curled his lips. The others chuckled and nodded. Before long, Yang Jian ran back, no longer smiling obsequiously. Instead, his eyes brimmed with disdain as he approached Yi Zichen and the others. Do you know what that old geezer said to me just now? He saw that you were well built and wanted to take you in as a concubine? Yi Zichen didn't know where the great sage had learned this from, but his taunting went straight to the point. Is there something wrong with your brain? Cursed Yang Jian. Isn't what I, son, said? Back in the heavenly court, weren't you happy to show off your figure to those fairies? If that's the case, it'd be a good home for you. As he listened to the great sage's mockery, Yi Zichen couldn't help but think back to when he'd first entered the heavenly court. At the time, they'd been looking for a general agent. All the immortals had displayed their various divine abilities. Back then, Yang Jian had done aerobics with them, showing off his figure. Thinking about it this way, the great sage was right. Yang Jian's face turned green, but he couldn't beat this monkey. All he could do was glare at him fiercely and explain. Just now, that old guy actually wanted to bribe me to go to his side, but I have to say, that old guy's offer is really tempting. After that, it triggered your restless heart. You must have thought that the other party's offer was too high, so you agreed to stay and be a spy for them. Looking at your fawning manner just now, it's definitely the case. Before he even finished speaking, the great sage took out the Rui Jingu Bang. His eyes flashed. Catch. Let's see if I, old son, will waste your life, you spy. As he spoke, the Rui Jingu Bang in his hand swung downwards. Yang Jian's eyebrows furrowed and the Erling lance appeared in his hand. He blocked with his saber, and the Rui Jingu Bang was knocked away. He couldn't take it anymore, so he raised his saber and started fighting the great sage. Why are they fighting? Pu Jingwan didn't quite understand what was going on. The two of them were fighting for no reason at all. Anyone could tell that the great sage was only half joking. How come they'd suddenly started fighting? Don't mind them too much. They're always like this. Yi Zichen had known them for a long time, so he didn't take it too seriously. Always like this? Pu Jingwan sighed in amazement and smiled wryly. She couldn't help but mutter to herself, these two brothers really are special. Yi Zichen sighed as he watched the two of them fight in the air above Heavenly God City. Quite a few patrolling guards noticed the commotion and hurried over. However, Yang Jian and the great sage were both outstanding sovereigns, and the ripples of energy released by their battle were enough to cause the great sage to tremble violently. The energy fluctuations they released weren't something the guards could withstand. Even the rulers of the city fell silent when they sensed their auras. They simply let the two of them fight. They're really direct. As the two brothers fought, Yi Zichen recalled Yang Jian's words and couldn't help but chuckle and shake his head. It seems he really underestimated me. Does he think he can poach my people as he pleases? I'm Skyspan Academy's #1 excavator. I've always been the one poaching others. This is the first time I've seen someone try to poach my people. He wasn't boasting. When Yi Zichen first joined Anti-Upheaval, he'd single-handedly poached the Grizzly Bear Society into a miserable state. That was how the two of them became enemies. However, after Xian Ji revealed her background, Pang Zheng and Di Long buried the hatchet and made peace. Xiao Ting was blatantly poaching Yi Zichen. It was clear that he didn't take Yi Zichen seriously at all. "That's a good thing for you," said Xian Ji. "He doesn't know you have the outside support. He simply thinks you're relying on me and the Yao Ceiling Pagoda to challenge him. That's definitely not a bad thing for you." I know." Yi Zichen nodded. When Yang Jian returned from the Xiao family, Xian Ji and Pu Jingwan had joined forces to lay down seals around them. That's why they dared to talk so openly. Otherwise, although this seemed like Xian Ji's territory, it was right next to the Xiao family's. The Xiao family might eavesdrop on their conversation. Even after they finished building their headquarters, Yi Zichen had to hire a formation grandmaster to set up formations around it. That way, the Xiao family wouldn't be able to spy on them. Perhaps she was worried that Yi Zichen wouldn't take what she'd just said to heart, so she deliberately deepened his understanding of the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family. Don't underestimate the Xiao family. No matter what, they're a descendant of the Lightning Emperor's clan. Their foundation is far more than what you see. If you want to talk about the God Realm's sacred lands, I don't even need to mention them. They've existed since the beginning of the era, so you can imagine how deep their foundations are. After Zhou Wu ascended to the throne, he supported a few clans. I'm afraid of them as well. Finally, there's the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family. Although I mentioned the Xiao family last, the way I see it, of all the factions I mentioned, the Xiao family is the most difficult to deal with. Don't forget, they control the myriad realms' lightning tribulation. They control heavenly lightning. Even Bai An's heavenly lightning came from the Xiao family. Do you understand what I'm saying? How could he not? What Xian Ji was trying to say was that, if the Xiao family really wanted to, they could control heavenly lightning through the lightning pool. If they fought them, it was entirely possible that they'd be struck by heavenly lightning. The most worrisome thing was that, if the Xiao family really did control heavenly lightning, how much could they control? Yi Zichen, who'd personally experienced heavenly lightning, knew that each bolt was stronger than the last. If the Xiao family didn't stop sending lightning, not even the God Emperor could withstand it. Chapter 1386. A whim. The Xiao family's lightning pool was definitely a variable. If the number of lightning tribulations was truly controlled by the Xiao family, then 30,000 lightning controllers could send lightning bolts into the lightning pool. What would happen to the experts of the God race? No matter how high his cultivation base was, could he withstand countless bolts of lightning striking his body? Can we snatch this broken thing for him? All of a sudden, Yi Zichen felt the urge to become a bandit. There were simply too many variables in the lightning pool, and Xiao Ting was now working with the demons and Yao. If the lightning pools continued to be controlled by the Xiao family, it wouldn't be a good thing for him. However, this was just a thought, just like how Yi Zichen had wanted to destroy the Divine Mountain or rebuild it. All of this seemed too shocking. Even if it could really be done, it would be next to impossible. Right now, he was still stuck in the half-step celestial being realm. If he really wanted to do these things, he would probably have to transcend. Since seizing the lightning pool was a pipe dream, it shouldn't be a problem to insert a high-ranking member of the Xiao family, right? After a moment's thought, Yi Zichen suddenly looked up at Yang Jian and the Great Sage, who were still locked in a fierce battle. Although neither of them had lost yet, it was clear that Yang Jian's side was in a disadvantageous position. The two of them were probably fighting on the spur of the moment. The great sage was itching to teach Yang Jian a lesson. Yang Jian wasn't a pushover either. He was determined to fight the great sage head-on. However, this scene gave rise to an idea in Yi Zichen's heart. Jing Wan, don't let them fight. If they keep fighting, someone will die. This was Heavenly God City, the capital of the God race. My aunt is a high-ranking member of the God Emperor's estate. Don't make things difficult for her. For you to still think of me, your aunt, I really must thank you. Xian Ji smiled faintly. Pu Jingwan stepped forward to stop them. The great sage, who had the upper hand, held his head high and puffed out his chest when he came down. On the way back, he kept provoking Yang Jian. Yang Jian, on the other hand, looked displeased, but his verbal skills were not inferior to the great sage's at all. For every sentence the great sage said, he could retort back with 10. The great sage's eyes widened, and he looked like he was going to continue fighting. Yi Zichen, on the other hand, was extremely satisfied. This was exactly the effect he'd wanted. He knew that Yang Jian and the great sage had always been like this. They fought every day, but their feelings for each other were actually stronger than anyone else's. Xiao Ting had no idea. Brother, just say that he's a lackey or not. Just now I said something bad about Xiao Ting, and now that stupid son of mine is King cursing me. OL son. The great sage descended from the heavens and continuously criticized Yang Jian. CK off. I really should have taken advantage of the fact that you're still a celestial being to chop off your head and eat monkey brains to nourish my body. Yang Jian glared at him angrily. Pu Jingwan, who'd followed them down, couldn't help but put a hand to her forehead. Even Xian Ji was dumbfounded. These two were really dominators. Why were they cursing like hooligans on the street? Both of you, stop talking. After calming them down, Yi Zichen sent a transmission to Yang Jian, Xian Ji, the great sage, and Pu Jingwan. After receiving Yi Zichen's transmission, they silently reinforced the restrictions around them. What's wrong? Asked Yang Jian. I suddenly had an idea. Within the restrictions, Yi Zichen gesticulated as he explained his plan. However, halfway through, he glared at Yang Jian sternly, almost as if he were berating him. Yang Jian hefted his lance and did his best to explain himself. What did the other side say? Within the Xiao family estate, Xiao Ting sat on his throne and asked Uncle, I don't know. They've set up a seal, so there's no way to know what they're talking about. However, that Yang Jian guy started fighting with them, and they fought fiercely at that. As they fought, that Yao even called Yang Jian a lackey. Is that so? Xiao Ting nodded. Later, perhaps that youth didn't want to see them fight amongst themselves, so he sent someone to take them away. Once they entered the restriction, they're fighting again. Xiao Ting smiled coldly and took another drag of his cigarette. Try to get in touch with Yang Jian. If you can rope him in, that'd be for the best. However, don't trust him too much. No one can say for sure that this isn't just an act. I know. Uncle nodded. Xiao Ting took a few deep drags from his cigarette, then his eyes grew hazy and trembled. He snorted and laughed. They don't have a sense of belonging. They're just trying to rope in a few people with resources. How laughable. Bro, are you sure this will work? After Yi Zichen explained his plan, the great sage knit his brows. This is a risky move. If something happens in the middle of it, or if the other side catches on, Yang Jian's life will be forfeit. Besides, given his intelligence, are you sure he's up to the task? Who are you looking down on? Yang Jian glared. I think it's a risky move too, but it's doable, but it really is dangerous. Xian Ji hesitated for a moment, then nodded. In truth, Yi Zichen's idea had come to him on a whim. Everyone else said it was dangerous, so he hesitated. I'll go. When he saw Yi Zichen's expression change, Yang Jian said seriously, I'm just going to be a spy. What's there to be afraid of? Even if he restricts me from using jade slips, we both have phones. If anything happens to me, you can come save me. You're so close, can't you just call him? Are you sure you want to go? It's really dangerous to be a spy. Have you seen cop movies? 8 out of 10 spies will die, and only the main character will survive, Yi Zichen asked. Then, I won't go. Yang Jian instantly cowered. You'd better go. After a moment's thought, Yi Zichen decided to give Yang Jian an important task. He had to plant someone in the Shao family, and the timing was right. If the great sage fought with him, he'd accidentally pushed Yang Jian closer to the Shao family's side. If he didn't even use this, it'd be a huge loss. It was just as Yang Jian said. If the Shao family restricted him from using jade slips, he could use his phone. If something really went wrong, he could just call the enemy's door. Alright, I'll go. Yang Jian nodded without hesitation. Don't be fooled by the great sage's constant annoyance at Yang Jian, but right now, there was a hint of worry in his eyes. Yang Jian noticed his expression and laughed. He patted him on the shoulder to comfort him, but the great sage slapped his arm away and hit him with his staff. You're crazy! Yang Jian cursed. You're the crazy one! The great sage glared at him. You're going to the enemy's door. They're definitely watching us. You heard Zichen's plan. Now you're putting your arm around my shoulder? Do you want to die? Yang Jian shivered. He instantly got into character, widened his eyes, and took half a step back. From an outsider's point of view, it looked as if the two of them had truly reached a boiling point. Chapter 1387. A prelude to going undercover. Man proposes, God disposes. For this passage to become a classic and be passed down to later generations, it naturally had its own wisdom. Take Yi Zichen, for example. No matter how meticulous his plans were, he'd never imagined he'd have an opportunity to plant an absolutely trustworthy spy in the Shao family. He should be grateful that the heavens were on his side. From the looks of it, everything was going in his favor. As for what other variables might arise in the future, he didn't need to worry about them for now. Right now, he had to figure out a way to quietly insert Yang Jian into the group without arousing Shao Ting's suspicions. Everyone was waiting for Yi Zichen's plan. Of course, Xianji didn't want to get involved. Given her current position, buying the land for Yi Zichen was already the limit of what she could do. If she gave him advice, she might as well cross that line. She simply crossed her arms and looked elsewhere. Yi Zichen sensed her actions, but he knew that she didn't want to get involved, so he didn't mind too much. The way he saw it, he was already grateful that his aunt had done so much for him. Plant Yang Jian inside the Shao family. Yi Zichen rubbed his chin, then glanced obscurely at the majestic manor across from him. This was a residence of the Lightning Emperor's family that had existed for generations. Outsiders could only see its grandeur and majesty on the outside, but who knew what sort of undercurrents were brewing inside? Especially at a time like this, when Shao Ting was secretly working with the demons and Yao. Yi Zichen wasn't sure whether or not everyone in the clan knew about this, but he was sure that some people already knew. The Shao family would be even more cautious now. Even if Shao Ting had taken the initiative to contact Yang Jian, that didn't mean that sending him over wouldn't raise suspicions. Furthermore, the Shao family had stood strong for generations. If Yang Jian went undercover, he'd be surrounded by danger. On the surface, Yi Zichen and the others would attack as soon as something happened to him, but no one could be sure that Yang Jian wouldn't be able to send a signal of danger. Whether it was for his safety or for the success of the operation, they had to make sure nothing went wrong. There's no rush. After a long period of thought, Yi Zichen's expression darkened. If we just send Yang Jian over, it'll seem too urgent. According to normal thinking, even if we really suspected Yang Jian, we would need a transitional period to accumulate contradictions. When this conflict reaches its peak and erupts, it's only reasonable for him to seek refuge with the Shao family. With that, Yi Zichen glanced at Yang Jian and reminded him. During this period, the Shao family may send someone to contact you. You must not appear too anxious. She could have the intention to go to his place, but she definitely could not show that she yearned for it. Because if your performance is too excessive, even if the other party doesn't suspect your motives for going there, they will still think that you are a disloyal person and won't put you in an important position. This was the most basic understanding of human nature. Everyone has their own selfish desires. For the sake of their own future, anyone would make a choice. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in, and a cultivator, for the sake of self-development, would choose to increase the efficiency of his forces. This was naturally not wrong. But if Yang Jian really thought that the other side's offer was higher, then he would be more inclined to the other side's intentions. Then wouldn't the Shao family worry that someone could poach Yang Jian if they offered a higher price? They would worry. That way, they naturally wouldn't let Yang Jian come into contact with the Shao family's core secret. After all, if Yang Jian was poached away, he would take their family's secrets with him. If Yang Jian truly wanted to gain their trust, he had to demonstrate his loyalty. However, Yi Zichen's distrust of him infuriated him. He had no other choice but to seek refuge with Shao Ting. That was the only way he could gain Shao Ting's trust, or at least be treated as an equal. Yang Jian listened to Yi Zichen's analysis and nodded. Yi Zichen continued. Also, for now, don't act too intimately with the great sage. The source of your conflict with me is the great sage himself. You have to constantly oppose him, and he'll always be suspicious of you. You can quarrel or even fight along the way. That'll make it seem more realistic. Understood. Yang Jian and the great sage nodded at practically the same time, then glared angrily at each other. It looked like they wanted to fight, but since Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan were still there, they didn't. Even so, the disdain and fury in their eyes were clear. When he saw this, Yi Zichen couldn't help but nod. He needed to get into character now. To Yi Zichen's surprise, Pu Jingwan was also an actress. She hadn't been assigned any scenes, but she'd taken the initiative to put herself between the two of them. She anxiously tried to calm them down. That was better and more realistic. Shao Ting's favorable impression of Yang Jian had led to Yi Zichen's sudden inspiration. Now the drama unfolded. As for what happened next, he'd do his best and leave it up to the heavens. There was no need to act too much. Yang Jian and the great sage had stopped fighting, and that was that. If he continued, it would seem like he was putting too much effort into his acting. As the leader of their alliance, Yi Zichen had to be impartial. He also had to show that his cultivation was too low, and that he wanted to interfere but couldn't. Yi Zichen pretended to sigh helplessly, then walked up to Xianji. Little guy, you've got a good grasp of human nature. Xianji smiled without even looking back. Yi Zichen smiled calmly back at her. Never mind the fact that he'd lived for a long time and seen all kinds of people, even back in the modern realm. He'd learned a thing or two from watching TV shows. Right, Auntie? You're paying attention to the Battle of Geniuses, right? Asked Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen remembered Murong Shui and the other's strange behavior, as well as his worry about anti-upheaval's situation. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to ask Xianji about the situation. What's wrong? Asked Xianji. It's nothing. I just wanted to know how anti-upheaval is doing. I haven't contacted them in a long time, so I wanted to know how they're doing. In truth, Yi Zichen didn't really care. He'd never thought things would be that bad. This was Heavenly God City. The way he saw it, they couldn't afford to cause too much trouble. At most, they'd just suffer some minor injuries and be eliminated. He asked Xianji purely for the sake of peace of mind. Little did he know, when he mentioned anti-upheaval, Xianji's expression stiffened. She paused for at least half a breath of time before replying. They're doing fine. That's good. Yi Zichen nodded without even looking back. At that moment, he suddenly saw one of Xianji's divine generals, Strength God, smash it to the ground with his hammer. For some reason, he had a bad feeling. He turned his head and spoke to Xianji. He turned to Xianji and said, Auntie, I told you not to demolish the Skyspan Trading Company. You haven't forgotten, have you? Do you think I'm senile? I just told you so I'd forget? Xian Ji rolled her eyes and pointed. Isn't that the Skyspan Trading Company? I specially gave it to you. Halfway through her sentence, she turned to look at the Skyspan Trading Company's territory and happened to see its divine general, Strength God, smashing his hammer into a 9-story building. In an instant, her eyes flashed with an embarrassed smile. Chapter 1388. A tour. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Fortunately, Xian Ji had stopped the Skyspan Trading Company in time. Not too many of their original buildings had been destroyed. Only that building had been destroyed. It's worth mentioning that during this time, the Upheaval Alliance entered the sights of many factions in Heavenly God City. After all, the statue and the Lightning Emperor's estate were the focus of everyone's attention. Quite a few people from the other divine mountains came to take a look and experience the wonders of the statue. Furthermore, the Upheaval Alliance had caused quite a stir, and they had Xian Ji's support. Factions big and small in Heavenly God City gradually learned of the Upheaval Alliance's existence. Quite a few clans even sent people to pay their respects and meet them. During this half a month, Yi Zichen was truly busy. In addition to sending Wei Jie and the others from the northern Divine Mountain here, he released all the Yao from the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. He even sent people to bring the Earth Supreme level Yao servants he'd left in the lower Divine Mountains to Heavenly God City. Only a small group of them remained to protect Upheaval. When the lower Divine Mountains Upheaval found out about their headquarters in Heavenly God City, their desire to raise their cultivation was stimulated. Before long, the first batch of lower Divine Mountains Upheaval members would join the Upheaval Alliance. Yi Zichen didn't have time to spare, so he didn't even think about going to the Divine Martial Academy. Furthermore, Xian Ji had personally told him that anti-upheaval was fine, so he focused all his attention on building the Upheaval Alliance. However, even if he didn't go, someone else came looking for him. Boss, there's a guy named Jiang Wei outside with a few men and women. He says he's your friend and wants to see you, said Wei Jie as he hurried over to Yi Zichen. Jiang Wei. Yi Zichen couldn't help but be surprised. The Upheaval Alliance really had caused quite a stir. It wasn't strange that Skyspan Trading Company's friends knew he was behind it. If Jiang Yong and the others had come, it wouldn't have mattered, but Jiang Wei had come? Yi Zichen found it hard to believe. Let's go take a look. By now, Jiang Wei and the others had already been brought to the reception area. Xiao Yumei personally welcomed them. When Yi Zichen and Wei Jie arrived at the hall's entrance, he saw, to his astonishment, the heads of the various student societies they'd come with. Among them, the one nodding and thanking Xiao Yumei with his rusted sword was none other than the navigator's Jiang Wei. Zichen. Xiao Yumei was the first to notice him. The moment she spoke, the other team leaders all stood up and looked over. Xiao Yumei gave him a gentle nod and smiled back at him before leaving the hall. Only then did the group truly surround him. Jiang Yong patted him on the shoulder a few times. Brother Yi, you're good. We're still small presidents in the academy. You really can't compare with others. You want to compare yourself to Zichen? His brain is several times sharper than yours, said Murong Shui, rolling her eyes. Brother Yi, that's an interesting name. Upheaval Alliance. Everyone knows Brother Yi belongs to anti-upheaval, teased Su Chao. In truth, Yi Zichen had considered this name when he first joined anti-upheaval. He was speechless. Back then, his faction was clearly upheaval, but Shui Mo's faction was pacifist. Yi Zichen smiled wryly and shook his head. Don't make fun of me. The Upheaval Alliance is an organization I founded back when I was still in the lower land. Back then, it was called the Upheaval Gang, but now that I'm on the Divine Mountains, it's a bit small, so I just called it the Upheaval Alliance. But you have to admit, I really do feel like I have an ill-fated relationship with anti-upheaval. Everyone laughed. After chatting for a while, they all wanted to take a look at the Upheaval Alliance. Yi Zichen agreed, but the Upheaval Alliance took up too much space. If they walked, they might not even see a third of it in a day, so they could only fly for a brief tour. This area is where the Upheaval Alliance's members live. This is where pill refiners, artifact refiners, talisman masters, and a few formation masters work. This is the training field. This is the Library of Secrets. This is the Trade District. For a full hour, Yi Zichen explained the Upheaval Alliance's situation to his old friends. You've seen the gist of it by now. It's not completely built yet. I originally wanted to invite you over to take a look once it was done. Even if cultivators were skilled in craftsmanship, the area was simply too vast. Even after all this time, they'd only managed to repair 30% of it. Even so, the Upheaval Alliance was majestic. Just by listening to Yi Zichen's plans, Jiang Yong and the others were convinced that, in time, the Upheaval Alliance would naturally gain a foothold in the God Realm. Brother Yi, you're truly extraordinary. Pang Zheng clicked his tongue in wonder. The others nodded in agreement, but Jiang Wei seemed troubled. It's all right. Yi Zichen chuckled. In the future, how about we Grizzly Bear Society members come directly to you? Laughed Pang Zheng. After learning that he and Yi Zichen weren't on the same level, Pang Zheng no longer felt any hostility towards Yi Zichen. That was especially true when he saw Yi Zichen's massive plans. His heart sank, but at the same time, he wanted to stick close to him. This was absolutely true. He really wanted to stick close to Yi Zichen. If he could form a relationship with Yi Zichen, he'd have backers like the Profound Pavilion, the Saint's Palace, and the Sea of Unforgettable. His Pang family had a bit of influence on the Northern Divine Mountain, but compared to these factions, they were still far behind. Furthermore, judging from Yi Zichen's current plans, the Upheaval Alliance was bound to become a first-rate faction, perhaps even a peak one. There was no harm in sticking with him. This explanation stunned Yi Zichen. He found it hard to understand what Pang Zheng was thinking, but at the same time, he somewhat understood. Pang Zheng couldn't stay in Skyspan Academy forever. He had to leave. He saw Yi Zichen's powerful backer, as well as his potential. He wanted to join Yi Zichen's side ahead of time. For him, this was a decent path forward. In truth, Yi Zichen was somewhat tempted by Pang Zheng's words. Right now, the Upheaval Alliance lacked manpower the most. Even if he released all the Yao from the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, they were still far from a peak faction like the Shao family. But if the Grizzly Bear Society graduated, they'd have an endless supply of new blood flowing into the Upheaval Alliance. This was absolutely a good thing for the Upheaval Alliance. Perhaps because he'd been thinking it over for too long, when the others saw that he wasn't going to say anything, Di Long hurriedly interrupted with a laugh. Pang Zheng, you're so smart. You know how to suck up to someone powerful. Why don't you take a look at how many Yao servants there are? Brother Yi has the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Do you really think he'll lack us? Di Long's original intention was to ease the awkwardness, but when Yi Zichen heard that, he panicked. Chapter 1389. A deal. When it came to supreme-level experts, the 9 Divine Mountains Academies had more than 70% of them. The other 25% belonged to their families. In the end, only 5% belonged to independent cultivators. If the Upheaval Alliance wanted to grow, they couldn't do without supreme-level experts. They didn't even need to think about their families' training. Most of them had a lofty sense of family honor and swore loyalty to their clans. As for the remaining 5%, they didn't even need to think about it. What right did he have to join a newly established faction like Yi Zichen's if he didn't join an academy and a family that had existed for many years? The only way he could get supreme-level experts was to recruit them from these academies. However, take the Northern Divine Mountain as an example. More than 70% of the Northern Divine Mountain's Skyspan Academy students were supreme-level experts. Most of them had ascended from the Infinite Realms. Since they didn't have any family backing, One reason for going to Skyspan Academy was to study was because they wanted to seek refuge in this unfamiliar environment. However, they had to graduate sooner or later. Once they left Skyspan Academy, they had to think of a way out. Joining societies was one way for them to find a new master. Murong Shui, Pangjing, and Jiang Yong were direct descendants of their families. They came to Skyspan Academy to recruit new blood for their families while they were there. When the time came, their students would, barring any accidents, pledge loyalty to their families as well. Yi Zichen didn't know much about the other academies, but given Skyspan Academy's scope, there shouldn't be too much of a difference. This sort of behavior had gradually become a fixed pattern. This was why the God Realm was like a pool of stagnant water. Everything was set in stone. Large clans grew larger and larger, while small clans grew smaller and smaller. Some were even destroyed. They had no choice but to seek protection from a major faction or directly join it. With this sort of fixed structure, it was difficult for new factions to take root and develop. Yi Zichen, who had the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, was an exception. His early development was supported by the pagoda's Yao servants. Furthermore, he had the Profound Pavilion and the Star Altar, as well as the Society of Saints. They were his most reliable backers and gimmick. However, if he continued like this, he wouldn't be able to become a first-rate faction. In the future, he'd have to oppose the Lightning Emperor's estate and Zhou Wu. His upheaval alliance had to grow, and it had to grow as fast as possible. If Pangjing really did intend to send his Grizzly Bear Society graduates to the Upheaval Alliance, then he wouldn't be able to do so. To be able to graduate from Skyspan Academy, regardless of their ultimate cultivation, they had at least received systematic training and education. This was exactly what Yi Zichen lacked. The Grizzly Bear Society had more than 1 million members. That meant they had 1 million Supremes, perhaps even Diviners. They were all siding with the Upheaval Alliance. How could Yi Zichen not be moved? He was anxious, indeed anxious. He was almost anxious to the point that he directly grabbed Pangjing's shoulder and asked in a particularly concerned tone, "What you said just now is true, right?" Yi Zichen's tone and the seriousness in his eyes stunned Pangjing. The way he saw it, a family's true strength was still determined by its top-notch battle prowess. Most of the students who graduated from Skyspan Academy were Earth Supremes, with a few Sky Supremes and an extremely small number of Celestials. Of these people, only the Celestials could be of some use to the family. The rest were mostly just a drain on the family's resources. He'd only said it in passing, but he hadn't expected Yi Zichen to care so much. Of course. Pangjing nodded, then continued, "But Brother Yi, don't think I'm being stingy. I can't hand over platoon leaders or experts who've graduated to 7th stage Sky Supremes or higher. My family needs them too." "Sure." Yi Zichen nodded. Yi Zichen knew full well that no matter how generous Pangjing was, there was no way he'd hand over true elites to Yi Zichen. Pangjing's goal here was to help his family find true elite. If he handed them all to Yi Zichen, how could his family develop? But top-notch elites? Yi Zichen had no shortage of them. The 3rd floor of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda had tens of thousands of diviner-level Yao servants, 20 rulers, and top-tier experts like Yang Jian, the Great Sage, and Pu Jingwan. Yi Zichen lacked low-level elites. To Pangjing and his family, these low-level elites were a burden, but to Yi Zichen they were sweet nectar. "You should be like Pangjing, right? Your family only needs top-notch battle prowess. In that case, how about sending the more ordinary ones over to the Upheaval Alliance as well?" Yi Zichen took advantage of the opportunity to circle around Jiang Yong and the others. "Brother Yi, why do you need so many low-level elites? You should know this, right? If a faction really wants to stand firm in the God Realm, the true deciding factor is the higher-up." As soon as Jiang Yong opened his mouth, he saw the Yao servants of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda below, as well as the fearsome supervisors. "That's right. Their family clans had been around for generations, and they'd long since had enough low-level elites. That's why they felt that having too many low-level elites was a burden. But Yi Zichen was different. His upheaval alliance had just been established, and what it lacked the most was manpower. Furthermore, there were dozens of terrifying auras below. Did he really lack top-notch experts? When other factions were established, they lacked top-notch experts. Yi Zichen was the complete opposite. He lacked low-level elite. The group of students in the club had followed them for a period of time, but there were very few who could actually graduate and enter their families. As for those who couldn't enter their families, they wanted to help, but they couldn't do anything about it. Since Yi Zichen needed them, what reason did they have to refuse? No problem. The Aspirations Society can send you talented graduates, but diviners. Hehe. Jiang Yong grinned. So can the Navigators. So can the Proud Sky Society. Murong Shui hesitated for a moment. The Appearance Association is made up of girls. I'll set up a women's department for them. Yi Zichen thumped his chest. Then there's no problem. All of Skyspan's major organizations agreed to help Yi Zichen with low-level elite. In total, they represented over 40% of Skyspan's students. Yi Zichen saw a problem through them. In truth, most of Skyspan's student societies were formed to recruit elites for their families. Most of the ordinary students had to be abandoned. Yi Zichen could negotiate with the other society heads and form a partnership. Given his current status, the other society heads wouldn't go against his wishes. Then, if he did his best to educate the students, the Upheaval Alliance would definitely reach new heights in a short period of time. Then, he could expand to the other Divine Mountains. He trusted that the other Divine Mountains were in similar circumstances. It would be great if he could get in touch with their academies. However, he didn't know anyone from the other Divine Mountains. Lu Jing. Yi Zichen suddenly thought of her. She was from the Eastern Divine Mountains Four Directions Academy. She might be able to help him. Coincidentally, they hadn't talked in a long time. He could use this opportunity to reconnect. As he considered this, Yi Zichen used his divine sense to send a message through a jade slip. After sending the message, Yi Zichen was in an incomparably good mood. He'd solved the Upheaval Alliance's manpower problem in such a short time. How could he not be delighted? Yi Zichen's eyes lit up with delight, then he turned to Jiang Wei. Ever since he'd arrived, his expression had been strange, and his brows were deeply furrowed. Chapter 1390. A successful deception. Jiang Wei's frown had been there from the start. Yi Zichen had noticed it earlier, but he'd been busy introducing them to the Upheaval Alliance and discussing the transfer of members. As a result, he hadn't had the time to talk about it. Now that he'd entered a period of free time, he'd just casually asked. However, what he didn't notice was that when he mentioned Jiang Wei, the faces of the others, who'd just been chatting cheerfully with him, suddenly changed. They instinctively glanced in Jiang Wei's direction. Murong Shui bit her lip and clenched her fist. It's nothing. For some reason, Jiang Wei paused for a moment. Yi Zichen couldn't help but be astonished. As far as he could remember, this man, who'd been bestowed the title of Sword Immortal, had always been cold, arrogant, and intimidating. Why had he paused for a moment? Yi Zichen glanced at the others. Although they'd hidden it well, he could still sense that something was off about them. Especially Murong Shui. He felt. He was nervous. As soon as Jiang Wei arrived, Yi Zichen had sensed something strange. He could understand why Jiang Yong and the others had come to visit, but Jiang Wei was the type of person who didn't care about anything else. Would he be curious enough to come visit? Was that even possible? No matter how big Yi Zichen's Upheaval Alliance was, it had nothing to do with him. All he wanted to do was immerse himself in the Tao of the Sword. And yet, not only had Jiang Wei come, his behavior was so strange that it was hard to ignore him. You didn't just come to see the Upheaval Alliance, did you? asked Yi Zichen after a moment's hesitation. Pang Zheng and the others instinctively averted their gazes. Jiang Yong grinned, clenched his fists, and laughed. Brother Yi, you really are meticulous. In truth, we did come here to discuss something else with you. Then just say it. What's there to be secretive about? You even invited Brother Jiang over. From the looks of it, he's definitely unwilling, laughed Yi Zichen. We're here because of what happened at the tavern, said Jiang Yong. Yi Zichen was puzzled. What happened at the tavern was long over. Although he'd found them strange, they'd started chatting on the spot. A few days ago, he'd personally asked Xianji and learned that anti-upheaval was fine. The only thing he didn't understand was why Shui Mo hadn't responded to his messages. After a moment of silence, Jiang Yong finally said, "We lied to you that day." "What do you mean?" Yi Zichen frowned. All of them looked at Jiang Wei. Yi Zichen looked over suspiciously. Obviously, there was a trace of struggle in Jiang Wei's eyes, and the rusted sword in his arms trembled slightly. After a while, he calmed himself down and said with a sigh, "In truth, your anti-upheaval society wasn't eliminated. You just went to a secret realm along the way." "Arcana land." "Yes, the arcane realm." Jiang Wei nodded affirmatively. Anti-upheaval discovered the secret territory during the Battle of Geniuses. Shui Mo decided that it was a great opportunity for them, so she withdrew from the competition and brought anti-upheaval with her. However, you also know that the Arcana realm is unknown, and the unknown has a certain degree of danger. Then, Yi Zichen's expression darkened. Danger? Could it be that Shui Mo and the others encountered some sort of mishap? But if that was the case, why did Xianji tell him that anti-upheaval's members were all good people? Could she have lied to him too? These were just Yi Zichen's guesses. He'd have to wait for Jiang Wei to tell him the truth. Before leaving, Shui Mo said she didn't want you to worry, so she told Jiang Yong and the others to keep it a secret from you. But you also know that I don't like to lie to others, so I didn't participate. Besides, I thought they were enough on their own, which is why I wasn't there that day. Jiang Yong and the others lied to you too, but I heard them say that their acting was a bit over the top, which aroused your suspicions. You just happened to mention elimination, so they agreed. Then why are you telling me now? Asked Yi Zichen. It's a coincidence. Jiang Wei frowned. You also know that Shui Mo had to tell Great Emperor Shuiyang about her trip to the secret territory. Right after the tavern lied to you, Jiang Yong and the others received news of the Sea of Innocence's arrival. What news? Great Emperor Shuiyang and the Wish God personally performed divinations and determined that the secret territory would be a daunting experience for Shui Mo and the others. When Jiang Yong and the others heard this, they sighed in relief. They also felt bad for lying to you, so they shamelessly asked me to tell you all this. So that's what happened. When Yi Zichen heard this, he relaxed and let out a long sigh. Just now, when Jiang Wei told him all this, he suspected that Xianji had lied to him. Now, it sounded like Anti-Upheaval's brothers had simply found a place of good fortune. This secret territory was full of unknown factors, and they didn't want him to worry, so they lied to him. Earlier, Xianji had said that Anti-Upheaval's members were good people. She must have divined their situation in the secret territory as well. He knew it. How could Xianji lie to him? No wonder Shui Mo didn't reply to all my messages. So she ran off to the secret territory. By now, Yi Zichen finally understood why Shui Mo hadn't replied. The secret territory was definitely isolated from the outside world, so there was naturally no way to send messages. It was just like cell phone reception. Back in the basement, it was easy to lose signal. Yi Zichen's suspicions were finally resolved, and he smiled in relief. Why didn't you guys go? Shui Mo was the one who discovered the secret territory. How could we just go? Laughed Jiang Yong. Is there anything you'd be embarrassed about? Yi Zichen laughed teasingly, then patted Jiang Yong on the shoulder and shook his head. Old Jiang, I can tell that you're pretty smart. You knew I'd trust you, so you went to Jiang Wei and told me. What? Are you saying you won't believe me if I tell you? Jiang Yong glared at him. I can't say for sure, Yi Zichen said half-jokingly. Brother Jiang, it seems you don't have much faith in Brother Yi. The Su brothers also joked about Jiang Yong. For a moment everyone laughed at Jiang Yong's lack of faith, but they didn't notice that Murong Shui and Jiang Wei glanced at each other. Murong Shui's gaze was filled with gratitude, while Jiang Wei's expression seemed conflicted, but he also relaxed. Yi Zichen's suspicions were all resolved, and when he thought about how these societies were sending people over, he felt like today was his lucky day. After strolling around the Upheaval Alliance for a while longer, Yi Zichen's jade slip flashed. He took it out and probed it with his divine sense. To his surprise, it was Lu Jing's reply. It wasn't a transmission reply, but a question mark written on a piece of paper. Sundara. When he saw the question mark, Yi Zichen couldn't help but shake his head. Cutie, what are you doing? Yi Zichen felt goosebumps rise all over his body. However, he still sent it over with an evil grin on his face. He could almost imagine the cold, aloof Lu Jing's expression when she heard this. He smiled and put the jade slip back into his pocket. Jiang Yong and the others had just managed to trick Yi Zichen, and when they saw his smile, they couldn't help but ask, What's wrong, Brother Yi? Brother Yi, what's wrong? Why are you so happy? It's nothing. Yi Zichen waved them off and laughed. You know Lu Jing, right? She's from the Four Directions Palace. I'm just sending her a message. Chapter 1391. Pulled out of their faction ever since Shuemo was sent to the Sea of Innocence for treatment, the battle of geniuses had truly come to an end. However, the Yaoan demons didn't agree to end the battle just like that, so none of their elites returned to their clans. They remained in Heavenly God City's Divine Martial Academy. However, they were grounded, and a seal had been placed around the academy, preventing its members from communicating with the outside world. This was a joint decision between Great Emperor Shuiyang and the God Emperor's estate. No one could oppose it. However, that didn't mean everyone who'd come to the Battle of Geniuses had to abide by this agreement. For example, representatives from the Divine Mountains, Holy Lands, Demon Clans, and Yao Clans had all left Divine Martial Academy without incident. They hadn't been grounded. Lu Jing was one of these special people. She knew about what happened that day. Murong Shui, the society head who'd come to deceive Yi Zichen, revealed a grave expression. Jiang Wei and Murong Shui, in particular, were the most obvious. Yi Zichen noticed the change in their expressions. He looked at Jiang Wei and the others in bewilderment, then arched his brows. What's going on with you guys? I didn't realize you knew Her Highness Lu Jing, said Pang Jing with an embarrassed smile. Shouldn't you all know? Yi Zichen arched his brows. That day, when Big Sister Lu fought the demon's holy maiden, Lady Providence showed up and asked for her contact information. You were all there, too. What's so strange about that? That's right, I almost forgot. Di Long forced a smile. No matter how much they thought about it, they'd forgotten that Yi Zichen and Lu Jing knew each other. Furthermore, they'd exchanged contact information. While I was talking to you, I came up with an idea. I wanted to contact her and see if I could recruit some people from Four Directions Academy. Yi Zichen laughed in embarrassment. In truth, the Aspirations Society, the Navigators, the Appearance Association, the Grizzly Bears, and Proud Heavens Academies had already sent enough people. However, whether it was the Shao family or the factions the God Emperor had raised, they each had an ocean's worth of clansmen. With the outsiders' support, Yi Zichen had more than enough resources to nurture talented people. He naturally wanted more people. This was to bolster his own courage. Compared to the Shao family or other first-rate family clans, the Upheaval Alliance was like comparing a child to an adult. However, when the number of people was large enough, it was like a group of children facing an adult. At that time, the fear in their hearts would be greatly reduced. Yi Zichen was just like that. He wanted to use the sheer number of people to reassure himself. Even with the support of the Aspirations Guild and the other guilds, he had still contacted Lu Qing to coax some people from the Four Directions Guild over. It was indeed a little too greedy. This, all right. Jiang Yong and the others smiled sheepishly, but the nervousness in their eyes was obvious. Murong Shui and Jiang Wei's foreheads were covered in a thin layer of sweat. Murong Shui was worried that the truth would be exposed, and so was Jiang Wei. However, he was even more worried that his lie would be exposed not long after he'd spoken it out. That would hurt his pride and pride. What should we do now? Brother Yi has contacted Lu Jing. She won't tell us, right? Su Chao's divine sense transmission simultaneously appeared in the sea of consciousness of all the presidents. I don't think so. Great Emperor Shuiyang personally said that we couldn't tell anyone. Her Highness Lu Jing probably wouldn't go against his will. However, nothing is absolute in this world. We still need to come up with a plan, said Jiang Yong. Does anyone have a way to contact Lu Jing? Asked Di Long. We definitely don't, but Beibei should. Even if she doesn't, the people of the Sea of Innocence must have a way to contact the Four Directions Palace, said Jiang Yong's divine sense. Shui contact Beibei. Tell her we can't keep this a secret any longer. Tell her to think of a way. Yi Zichen scratched his head and glanced at Jiang Wei and the others. As soon as they mentioned Lu Jing, their expressions became indescribably strange. Yi Zichen reached into his robes. He still hadn't received a reply. Little did he know, while he was reading the jade slip, Murong Shui had already sent a message to Shui Beibei, who was in the northern Divine Mountains Sea of Innocence. The Sea of Innocence. As its name suggested, the northern Divine Mountains Holy Land, the Sea of Innocence, was an ocean. A palace sat in its center. This was the residence of the Sea of Innocence's Shui family. The atmosphere inside and outside of the Shui family was solemn. All of this was because the Sea of Innocence's second princess's fate was unknown. Shui Mo lay on a bed in a luxurious room. Her face was pale, and her lips and eyes were a deep purple. There was even a purplish-red line running down her forearm. She was no longer breathing, and her soul was on the verge of collapsing. An old man with a mustache sat in front of Shui Mo's bed. From time to time, he checked Shui Mo's eyes and checked her pulse. In the end, he sighed and shook his head, then tapped 9 of her acupuncture points. Hermit Emperor Mo. The Hermit Emperor. He was the most famous doctor of the god race. However, 10,000 years ago, he'd lived in seclusion on the western Divine Mountain. Rumor had it that he'd tried to treat the 5 Elements Great Emperor, but no matter how powerful he was, he couldn't save the 5 Elements Great Emperor. After the 5 Elements Great Emperor's death was announced, he went into seclusion and founded the Hermit Palace. With the Hermit Emperor in charge of the Hermit Palace, more than 90% of the god race's doctors were subordinates. It was similar to the Southwest Divine Mountains Supreme Hall, which was staffed by formation masters. The Southeast Divine Mountains Great Void Temple was staffed by artificers. The Northwest Divine Mountains Jade Lake was staffed by pill refiners. Each of these forces had an existence with absolute rallying power in this domain. However, unlike the other factions, the Hermit Emperor wasn't the leader of the other factions. He was still active within the god race, and had secluded himself from worldly affairs. The fact that Shuiyang had invited him here meant that he had a lot of face. As for the one who'd spoken just now, it was a beautiful woman who bore a striking resemblance to Shui Mo. Compared to Shui Mo, she was a bit more mature. However, her pretty face was filled with undisguisable worry. The Hermit Emperor glanced at the people in the room. The people standing in this room were all people who could topple the entire god race with a single stomp of their feet. Did their presence here represent the future of the god race? That cold, arrogant man in purple robes must be Bian from the Four Directions Palace, right? That woman with the wise look in her eyes must be the Profound Pavilion's Xianji. And the woman he was talking to right now must be Shui Yang's ex-wife. Judging from the mark on her sleeve, was she the one who founded the Jade Lake? That old geezer from the Great Void Temple told me about it before I came. And then there's the one I only saw briefly on the way here. She looks like Su Qinyan, the Empress of the Foxes. Are they already trying to form a faction? The Hermit Emperor muttered to himself. Finally, he glanced at Xuemo on the bed. He'd lived in seclusion for 10,000 years and no longer cared about the god race's future. The only thing that made him sigh was that, after 10,000 years of seclusion, he'd failed yet again. Did they want me to go into seclusion again? I pity this child. Who was it that injured her? How could they be so ruthless? Could it be that the assailant wanted to use this method to bring the god race's future to the surface? If that's what they wanted, they'd succeeded. But the child had suffered. He sighed inwardly, then met the woman's expectant gaze. The Hermit Emperor gently covered Xuemo with the blanket. Chapter 1392. The Great Lie to Protect the Star Lord. Bang. Waiting for the Hermit Emperor's answer, the beautiful woman seemed to lose all her strength. She stumbled back several steps, shattering the vases in the room. Be careful. Xianji reached out and used her divine power to stop him. The woman smiled bitterly and struggled free of Xianji's grip. Then, she turned around and lunged at Shuiyang like a madwoman. The people in the room quickly stopped him. The beautiful woman also roared with red eyes. Shuiyang. From start to finish, Shuiyang's face remained expressionless. Even when he saw the Hermit Emperor shake his head and Xuemo's soul about to collapse, he didn't show any emotion. The other people in the room were also silent. In the quiet bedroom, only the beautiful woman's laughter could be heard. Back then, I wanted to take Mo away, but you didn't let me. You knew that the Battle of Geniuses was a trap, but I didn't want Mo to go, but you still didn't. He went, and what was the result? Tell me, what's the result? The woman's hysterical cries drew everyone's attention. Xianji silently lowered her head and looked at Xuemo, who was lying on the bed, a look of pity in her eyes. However, Shui Yang's face remained expressionless. He just stood there, tall and straight. I'm going to kill that brat. Zhao Qianhe had been standing by Xuemo's bedside the entire time. She gritted her teeth and was about to leave when Shui Yang stopped her. Get out of the way, Zhao Qianhe shouted with a dark expression. We can't go. If we do, we'll fall right into Zhou Wu's trap, said Shui Yang. That's your problem. What can he do to me? If worse comes to worst, I'll just return to the First Era and kill the person who injured little Mo, Zhao Qianhe snorted nonchalantly. No, replied Shui Yang coldly. The tension in the room reached a boiling point. Just then, Shui Bebe ran in, a jade slip glowing red in her hand. Father! Shui Bebe had just entered the room, so she wasn't sure what was going on. When she saw Bebe enter, Zhao Qianhe thought for a moment, then retreated to the side. There were some things that he couldn't let Bebe know. She was still too young. Although Shui Bebe was young, she could still sense the strangeness in the room. She blinked at Zhao Qianhe, then glanced at the beautiful woman, who was doing her best to suppress her emotions. She looked very much like Xuemo. Auntie Ling, what's wrong? The woman called Auntie Ling feigned a smile. Shui Bebe's pupils constricted. Auntie Ling, silly child, don't think too much. Your big sister Mo is fine. Look, Grandpa Hermit Emperor is here. Your big sister Mo will wake up soon. Zhao Qianhe gently patted her little head and said, Did you come here because you have something to say? Then hurry up and say it. Grandpa Hermit Emperor still has to heal your sister. You can't stay here for too long. Umo Emperor Shui's heart, Shui Xt didn't know how bad Xuemo's condition was. The way she saw it, she was furious that Xuemo was injured. But she trusted that Shui Yang and the others would heal her. Once Xuemo woke up, the two of them could take revenge on that bastard. Yun. Shui. She didn't want to delay Xuemo's treatment, so she handed the jade slip to Shui Yang. Big Sister Morong said that Yi Zichen found Lu Jing from the Four Direction Palace. They're worried that the matter will be exposed, so they told us to contact the Four Direction Palace. Got it, said Shuiyang. Then hurry up and treat my second sister. With that, Shui Beibei ran out of the room. Shuiyang glanced at Bian, who nodded in response. Got it, I'll tell Lu Jing. What's so special about Yi Zichen? Why are you so protective of him? Zhao Qianhe stared intently at Shuiyang and Bian. She had interacted with Yi Zichen a few times before, but he hadn't left a good impression on her. But ever since this guy entered her line of sight, no matter what happened after that, his shadow would always appear. What was even more incomprehensible was that when Shui Mo was injured, Shui Yang's first decision wasn't to heal her. It was to prevent Yi Zichen from finding out. The other forces all agreed, including her sister, the woman Bei Bei called Aunt Ling. He might be the Third Era's Master of the Stars, said Shuiyang. The others didn't seem too surprised. It was obvious that they'd known all this already. When she heard this, Zhao Qianhe's eyes widened. He's the Master of the Stars? Most likely, said Qianji. You people from the First Era have already interacted with him. Given their relationship, it's highly likely he's the Master of the Stars. You came from the First Era, so you know full well how important the Master of the Stars is. We naturally have to ensure his safety. Does Zhou Wu know? He doesn't. Bai narrowed his eyes and snorted. If he did, he'd have killed Yi Zichen and taken his celestial fate long ago. This isn't the first time he's done this. That Bai family brat made a move on Shui Yang's second daughter, but that was just a test. He wanted to test Zhou Wu's patience, as well as our personal relationship. Zhao Qianhe gradually fell silent. If Yi Zichen was the Master of the Stars, then they really did have to ensure his safety. No wonder her sister hadn't done anything out of line even though she'd been furious. She knew. They couldn't let Yi Zichen find out. Although Zhao Qianhe hadn't interacted much with him, no matter how bad her reputation was, she couldn't deny that he was a loyal and righteous child who didn't care about the consequences of his actions. If he rushed over and Zhou Wu caught wind of the Emperor Star's whereabouts. But we can't just keep hiding it like this. We have to hide it for as long as we can. Even if we have to lie to the heavens, we have to keep it under wraps, said Shuiyang solemnly. Then little Mo. Let's just say she blocked a calamity for the Emperor Star. The others in the room were indifferent once more. Blocked a calamity for the Emperor Star? Under the circumstances, this was the easiest way to explain it. It was also the most comforting explanation they could come up with. But why? It was little Mo blocking a calamity. Zhao Qianhe's lips quivered. In the end, all she could do was walk over to Shui Mo's bedside and clutch her hand tightly. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Xianji looked out the window in silence. Auntie Ling sat on the floor, covering her face and crying bitterly. Shuiyang and Bian looked at each other. Their expressions were cold, but their eyes were filled with sorrow. Especially Shuiyang. That was his daughter. How could he not care? But things had already gotten to this point. What else could he do? Just now, you were talking about the Master of the Stars, weren't you? At that moment, the Hermit Emperor, who'd been completely ignored, suddenly spoke up. Everyone in the room looked up at the Hermit Emperor and heard him say, "You're right." Chapter 1393. Never would have thought Lu Jing would have been annoyed. Just now, she'd received a message from that annoying bastard. His corny divine sense made her feel incredibly uncomfortable. Whenever she thought of his oily tone, she couldn't help but tremble like she was suffering from malaria. She didn't want to have any more contact with this shameless bastard. Especially that girl who followed him around all the time. She didn't even know if she was dead or alive, yet he was still in the mood to talk to her like that. That annoying bastard was irresponsible. She tossed the jade slip into a corner of her room, then fished out a cell phone from her pocket. She'd obtained it by chance a few days ago. She clutched it like a precious treasure, blushing as she curiously clicked on a half-finished anime. She didn't know why, but the content was so filthy. Given her personality, she should have hated it. But she couldn't help herself. It was like her subconscious was urging her to keep watching. Ugh! Lu Jing lay on the bed, flipping through page after page. Her face was flushed, and she covered her face from time to time, leaving a tiny gap between her fingers. Her eyes brimmed with curiosity as she continued to flip through the pages. The jade slip she tossed into the corner flashed with red light. That annoying bastard really was persistent. Lu Jing glared at the jade slip in the corner, but didn't look at the messages inside. The way she saw it, the content of that annoying bastard's messages was definitely disgusting. Lu Jing, who'd been lost in her fantasy world, was frightened out of her wits. She covered her phone with a pillow, then sat on the bed like a frightened ostrich. Why, Your Majesty? What are you doing? You didn't even reply to my messages. The one who'd messaged Lu Jing with his divine sense was none other than Bai, and from the northern divine mountains Sea of Innocence. Ever since Shui Beibei's arrival, he'd been trying to get in touch with Lu Jing. However, every time he sent a message through a jade slip, Lu Jing assumed it was from that annoying bastard. So she ignored him. Baian had no choice but to reach out with his divine sense and get in touch with Lu Jing. Were you the one who sent that message just now? I thought it was from that annoying. Lu Jing said to herself, but halfway through, she quickly covered her mouth with her hand. She knew that it was a derogatory term for Yi Zichen, but if she said it to others, it might cause a misunderstanding. Lu Jing didn't linger on this matter and asked, "Do you have anything to tell me? I heard that person called Yi Zichen contacted you, right?" "Yes. He doesn't know that Shui Mo was injured by the Bai family, and we don't want him to know either. When you talk to him, don't mention it. If he asks about you, tell him Shui Mo and the others went to a hidden realm. It's fine if I don't reply to him." When Lu Jing gave such a reply, Lao Ai was silent for a long time. "This is indeed a way, but I still hope that you can interact with him more. You should be able to understand what I mean. I still have some matters to take care of in the Sea of Innocence. If anything happens to the Four Directions Palace, contact me at any time." As soon as his voice fell, Baian unilaterally cut off the communication between their divine senses. Even if Lu Jing wanted to reply, she couldn't. Her cultivation wasn't as high as Baian's. He couldn't extend his divine sense from the Sea of Innocence to the Four Directions Palace. Lu Jing pursed her lips and bit her lip, then glanced at the jade slip she'd tossed into the corner. Contact him more? Lu Jing's heart was filled with reluctance, but she still picked up the jade slip. She probed it with her divine sense. Yi Zichen's corny message was still there. As soon as she heard it, she couldn't help but tremble. "You guys are really strange." Yi Zichen cocked his head and looked at the other society heads' expressions. Their reactions were far too abnormal. He couldn't help but think too much about it. At that moment, the jade slip in his pocket lit up. Yi Zichen took out the jade tablet and received Lu Qing's icy reply. "What?" It seemed that after losing her memories, Lu Jing didn't like this sort of corny tone. Yi Zichen muttered to himself, then replied, "I'm just chatting with you. Can't I?" While he was replying to Lu Qing, the other guild leaders were also conversing with each other. "How did it go?" asked the Su brothers. Beibei said she already told Great Emperor Shuiyang. "I'm sure the Four Directions Palace will do their best to cooperate with us," said Morong Shui. "That's good." Everyone let out long sighs, and the tension on their faces gradually dissipated. As soon as Yi Zichen sent the message, he turned around and saw that their expressions had changed yet again. "You guys, are you all right?" "Brother Yi, what could possibly happen to us?" Jiang Yong laughed heartily. "We've already seen everything we wanted to see. We still have other things to do, so we won't disturb you any longer." "You're leaving just like that?" "I was planning on having a meal with you guys," said Yi Zichen. "No, we have other matters to attend to. We need time to send you talented people, Brother Yi. When it came to sending them talented people, Yi Zichen didn't try to keep them any longer. Then hurry up and get back to work. Come back when you have time. The society heads left the Upheaval Alliance's headquarters. As he watched them leave, Yi Zichen couldn't help but frown. These people. They'd come out of nowhere, and they'd left out of the blue as well. We're leaving just like that? Di Long furrowed his brows. If we stay any longer, we'll have even more openings, said Pang Jing. The others nodded. They'd already finished what they needed to do. What Lu Jing said wasn't something they could control. However, Great Emperor Shuiyang would definitely contact the Four Directions Palace, so there shouldn't be any problems. There was no need for them to stay any longer. Bang! At that moment, they suddenly bumped into a black-robed man on the side of the road. They hurriedly apologized, but the man didn't seem to mind. He simply nodded at them and left. The others didn't take it to heart either. As they walked, they chatted about how much longer they were going to keep this a secret. Suddenly, Murong Shui stopped in her tracks. She frowned and looked behind her. What is it? Don't you think that person we bumped into looked a little familiar? Murong Shui furrowed her brows. Familiar? Jiang Yong arched his brows. He really hadn't paid much attention to that person's face. To his surprise, Jiang Wei, who'd been silent this entire time, suddenly turned around and rushed in that direction. Just as the others were wondering what he'd done, they heard Murong Shui say, "That person looks like the demon's holy maiden. That person seems to be the demon's holy maiden. The direction she's heading in, the Upheaval Alliance." The society heads reacted. They glanced at each other, then roared. Chapter 1394. Exposed. Why had the holy maiden suddenly appeared here? Shouldn't she have returned to the demons by now? Murong Shui and the others all wondered the same thing, but for the holy maiden to suddenly appear in the vicinity of the Upheaval Alliance, they were certain. She was definitely going to find Yi Zichen. The other races of the God realm might not want internal strife, but the demons. They'd been waiting for this opportunity. They'd planned everything. Whether it was Xianji or Shuiyang, they'd done everything they could. In order to keep Yi Zichen in the dark, they'd colluded with multiple factions and lied to him. They'd never have guessed that the Holy Maiden would appear at a time like this. Shui'er, hurry up and contact Bebe. Tell her what's going on. We're going to stop the Holy Maiden. Whether or not we can stop her, we have to let Great Emperor Shuiyang know. Understood. Murong Shui stayed behind and started contacting Shui Bebe. Jiang Yong and the others sped off as fast as they could. They had to stop the Holy Maiden before she reached the Upheaval Alliance. Little did they know, just as they sensed something strange, the black-robed man they'd met earlier chuckled. It seems. We'll have to hurry. Yi Zichen watched Jiang Yong and the others leave, then returned to the reception hall. To his disbelief, Lu Jing's tone had clearly been filled with impatience. Yet, she'd forced herself to use that impatient tone to chat with him for almost an hour. Yi Zichen could be said to be overly suspicious. Even in his conversation with Lu Jing, he'd mentioned anti-upheaval. The results were more or less the same. They'd all gone to a secret realm, and Yi Zichen felt a bit more at ease. They all came to the same conclusion. Only then did Yi Zichen feel a bit more at ease. Jiang Yong and the others were acting too strangely, which was why he had no choice but to seek confirmation from them. When he felt they'd had enough, Yi Zichen was just about to talk to Lu Jing about sending more people. We meet again." A chuckle suddenly rang out in the hall. When he looked up, he saw that the black-robed Holy Maiden had already taken off her hat. Her purple eyes were smiling. A few Upheaval Alliance members chased after her. When Yi Zichen saw her, he frowned and placed the jade slip on the table, then waved at the pursuers. Yi Zichen spoke up after the members bowed and retreated. "What are you doing here? Don't tell me you're also here to visit." "Can't I?" The Holy Maiden didn't hesitate at all. She sat down on a chair and smiled. "I came here in advance to familiarize myself with the situation. It'll be easier to deal with enemies in the future. Then that's even more reason not to show you around. I'm truly sorry, said Yizichin. You're really decisive. How could Sun Yij like someone like you? I really don't understand. The holy maiden couldn't help but shake her head. Then she smiled. Actually, I was just joking with you. I'm a person of character, and the unknown is the most exciting thing to do. I'm not in the mood to test your strength. Besides, your small faction isn't enough for me to test your strength. Hey, do you have anything to drink? Give me some. I'm quite thirsty after such a long journey. He waved his hand and threw the wine on the table in front of the holy maiden. If you're not afraid of death, then drink. What's there to be afraid of? Without any hesitation, the holy maiden poured the wine into her mouth. She drank it warmly and carefully covered her mouth with her sleeve. She looked like a young lady from a noble family. When she returned the wine to the table, it was empty. Yizichin watched her vigilantly. From the moment he'd first met her, he knew she was no ordinary woman. It was hard to see through her motives, her thoughts, and her purpose in doing things. Now, all of a sudden, she'd run over to the Upheaval Alliance. You don't need to worry about the battle of geniuses? The holy maiden covered her mouth and laughed. Her deep purple eyes were playful and pitiful. It seems you really were kept in the dark. If I hadn't come, who knows how long you'd have been kept in the dark. What a pitiful little thing. He frowned. Yizichin frowned. What do you mean? You're still talking about the battle of geniuses? Don't you know that it stopped half a month ago? Laughed the holy maiden. It stopped? Why? Don't you know? The holy maiden laughed, then came to a sudden realization. That's right. You didn't even know that the battle of geniuses had stopped. How could you possibly know why? What exactly are you trying to say? Just say it, said Yizichin. I'm afraid your heart won't be able to take it. The holy maiden chuckled, walked up to Yizichin, and whispered into his ear. Shuemo was almost beaten to death. Did you know about that? Boom. Instantly, a violent aura burst forth from Yizichin's body. Yizichin's aura wreaked havoc throughout the entire reception area, causing the ground beneath his feet to crack under his weight. Yizichin forced himself to look away, then glared at the holy maiden. I dare you to say that again. I told you there was no way you could accept it. The holy maiden giggled and retreated to the side. She ran her fingers through her hair, which Yizichin had messed up. A few days ago, your anti-upheaval society's Shuemo, the second princess of the northern divine mountains Sea of Innocence, was almost beaten to death. Even now, we don't know if she's still alive or not. Shui Yang and the Central Divine Mountain suppressed this matter. All participants are forbidden from leaving the Divine Martial Academy, and no one is allowed to leak this information. As for why they're doing this, I'm sure you know. They just don't want you to know. As for me, I just don't like seeing you kept in the dark. You look so sullen, as if the entire world is playing you. Little Sun likes you so much. How could I just watch you get tricked? In order to let you know the truth, I came all the way from the Jili to tell you. What do you think? Compared to them, I've treated you much better, haven't I? Is that so? Yizichin smiled indifferently, but beneath his silence, anyone could sense the towering rage hidden within. No wonder Jiang Yong and the others had acted so strangely. No wonder they'd tried to stop him from going to the Divine Martial Academy. They'd done all this to keep him in the dark, to keep it a secret. They'd gone so far as to lie to the heavens. Anti-Xian Ji was involved, and so was the Four Directions Palace. Brother Yi. At that moment, Jiang Wei arrived at the Upheaval Alliance's headquarters. He'd been flying on his sword the entire time, so he was several times faster than Pang Jing and the others. He hadn't seen a single holy maiden along the way, and he'd even wondered if they were seeing things. Regardless of whether he was seeing things or not, he made a beeline for the Upheaval Alliance's headquarters. Ignoring his fellow disciples' attempts to stop him, he headed straight for the Upheaval Alliance's guest room. He looked forward to not seeing even a shadow of the Holy Maiden. They'd been too nervous. Until he saw. The Holy Maiden stood by Yi Zichen's side with a faint smile. When Jiang Wei arrived, she even smiled back. Yi Zichen sat upright in his chair and looked at him coldly. His voice was so deep it was suffocating. He spoke softly, as if he were passing judgment. Chapter 1395. Before the storm, the northern divine mountain, the Sea of Innocence. When the Hermit Emperor said that Shui Mo could still be saved, everyone in the room was shocked. Zhao Qianhe and Auntie Ling were the most astonished. They stared fixedly at the Hermit Emperor, their eyes brimming with hope and anticipation. Even Shui Yang's emotionless eyes trembled slightly. I can't tell you right now. I have to meet the Master of the Stars first. I'll tell him myself. I'm going to go capture him. Zhao Qianhe tugged at her sleeves and turned to leave, but Shui Yang stopped her. What are you doing now? Shui Yang didn't answer her question directly. Instead, he looked at the Hermit Emperor. How confident are you? I'm not sure. I read about this method in ancient texts, but I'll have to wait for the Master of the Stars to decide how to carry it out, said the Hermit Emperor calmly. Everyone fell silent once more. However, as time passed, Shui Yang, Xianji, and Bian conversed with each other through their divine senses. In the blink of an eye, another 2 hours passed. Qianhe, go bring Yi Zichen here, said Shui Yang suddenly. Shui Yang suddenly said. Zhao Qianhe, who'd been waiting for a long time, nodded solemnly, then hurried out. However, just as she reached the door, she bumped into Shui Beibei, who was rushing in as well. Shui Beibei fell to the ground. She rubbed her sore nose, and tears welled up in her eyes. Ah, Beibei! Shui Beibei hurriedly helped Shui Yang up from the ground. Shui Beibei was still rubbing her nose. Ignoring the pain, she ran over to Shui Yang. Dad, Big Sister Morong said the demon's holy maiden went looking for Yi Zichen. What? Shouted Xianji. Bian, who'd been leaning against the door, raised his brows. Auntie Ling's pupils constricted as she held Shui Mo's hand. Shui Yang's brows furrowed. Even Zhao Qianhe, who'd been about to go looking for Yi Zichen, stopped in her tracks. Xianji, aren't you in charge of Heavenly God City now? How could demons appear in the city? And how could they find Yi Zichen? Shouted Shui Yang. I haven't received any news. Xianji frowned. The atmosphere in the room grew tense and heavy. The Holy Maiden had suddenly appeared, but not only had Xianji not heard anything about it, she'd even sent her to find Yi Zichen. Everyone present understood why she was looking for Yi Zichen. Is Heavenly God City managed by Xianji? I don't think so. Bian, who was leaning against the door, smiled indifferently. Don't forget that Heavenly God City is ultimately Zhou Wu's territory. Zhou Wu. Shui Yang frowned. At this time, Xianji was also sending messages through jade slips to her subordinate. The jade slips flashed and her expression grew darker and darker. She kept the jade slip and looked at the others in the room. My people have all been replaced. Right now, it's the Shen family's people who are controlling Heavenly God City. See, I was right. Bian snorted. At this time, he was using the Shen family to replace Xianji's people. At this time, the few people in the room frowned deeply. It looks like Zhou Wu no longer trusts you, Zhao Qianling said. Has he ever trusted me? Bian was starting to talk a lot. He only trusts himself. Even the Shen, Bai, Yuqi, and Huangfu families, he's never truly trusted them. He's just that kind of selfish person. Dad, Big Sister Morong is asking me again. What should we do? Shui Beibei pouted. Shui Yang smiled bitterly, glanced at the others in the room, then cupped his fists at the Hermit Emperor. Hermit Emperor, please take care of my daughter for the time being. We have to personally make a trip to Heavenly God City. They were too late. Jiang Wei stood in front of the door. When he saw the Holy Maiden and Yi Zichen, his face ashen and seething with rage, he knew he'd been exposed. It was laughable. He'd known from the start that hiding things like this wasn't going to work. The better the concealment method, the longer the concealment method. If it was inferior, the shorter the concealment method. In any case, the truth couldn't be concealed. Lies would always be exposed one day. He'd never even considered participating in this monstrous lie. His pride and arrogance made it impossible for him to accept lying. However, in the end, he'd been persuaded by Jiang Yong. Even though he knew this was a quagmire, he'd resolutely jumped in. Not long ago, even though he'd perfectly played out the words Jiang Yong and the others had taught him, he hadn't been particularly excited. Instead, he'd felt even more suppressed. He'd been terrified, worried that his lie would be exposed. When he saw the holy maiden, his heart had been in his throat. He'd ignored Murong Shui and the others and gone off on his own. As he chased after the holy maiden, his nerves had been stretched to the limit. When he finally arrived at the Upheaval Alliance and saw the scene before him, he felt inexplicably relieved. His lie had been exposed. It had happened much sooner than he'd expected. However, now that he'd been exposed, he didn't need to worry about being exposed any longer. It was just ridiculous. Why had he been brainwashed by Jiang Yong and agreed to join their army of lies? Before long, he understood. He just didn't want to watch Yi Zichen walk to his death. That was all. Judging from Yi Zichen's current state of mind, he absolutely already knew about Shui Mo's injuries. With the Holy Maiden supporting him from behind the scenes, Jiang Wei alone wouldn't be able to stop Yi Zichen and prevent him from acting on impulse. I wonder how long it'll take Great Emperor Shuiyang to get here. As he pondered this, Jiang Wei silently spread out his divine sense. Before Shuiyang arrived, he had to do everything in his power to stop him. Brother Yi. At that moment, Jiang Yong and the others arrived right behind Jiang Wei. When they saw the Holy Maiden by Yi Zichen's side, their expressions changed despite themselves. You're all here. Yi Zichen's body was already enveloped in a layer of flames. Within the flames, they could faintly make out silver lightning. The temperature of the entire reception room was raised by the flames, and the crackling thunder behind him made everyone feel his monstrous anger. When she saw Jiang Wei and the others, as well as the Holy Maiden by Yi Zichen's side, her pretty eyes flashed. Then she walked up to Yi Zichen's side. The Holy Maiden tactfully retreated to the side. Zichen. Yi Zichen gently patted her hand to indicate that he was fine. Then he looked coldly at Jiang Wei and the others. Chapter 1396. Mixed emotions. Anyone could sense the fury in Yi Zichen's indifferent tone. That was for sure. He'd treated others with sincerity, yet he'd been played like a fiddle. If it was anyone else, it would be difficult for them to maintain a calm heart. Brother Yi, don't believe that witch's nonsense, shouted Pang Jing. So you're saying Shui Mo and the others went to the secret realm, right? Yi Zichen smiled at Pang Jing. The instant he nodded, Yi Zichen slammed the table beside him, shattering it. Even now, you're still trying to trick me? In an instant, countless Upheaval Alliance members gathered outside the hall. Pu Jingwan, Yang Jian, the great sage, and the others were among them. They stared in shock at the shattered table, then at the heavy atmosphere. They couldn't help but glance at each other. After exchanging a few glances, they silently walked in from the outside. They stood by Yi Zichen's side. In truth, Yi Zichen already knew what was going on. As soon as the Holy Maiden of the Nine Li told him about Shui Mo's injuries, he could tell whether she was telling the truth or Jiang Yong and the others. It wasn't that he wanted to believe the worst possible outcome, but that Jiang Yong and the others had been acting very unnatural. That unnaturalness had been imprinted in Yi Zichen's heart, making it impossible for him to trust anything they said. Pang Zheng and the others were terrified. Even Xiao Yumei couldn't help but frown. It had been 100 years since she'd last seen Yi Zichen, but she firmly believed that her understanding of him wouldn't diminish with time. He was furious, and his anger was unmistakable. She really wanted to know what they and that woman had said to make Yi Zichen go this far. Brother Yi, I'm sorry, Jiang Wei said apologetically. Jiang Wei, I never would have guessed you'd step into these muddy waters too, laughed Yi Zichen. I didn't either. Given my personality, I wouldn't have bothered getting involved, said Jiang Wei with a bitter smile. But as you can see, I got involved anyway. Ha! Yi Zichen sneered. We really did lie to you, but please believe me when I say we had good intentions, said Jiang Yong. I don't want to hear any of this. Yi Zichen decisively interrupted Jiang Yong. I want to know how Shui Mo is right now. In an instant, everyone fell silent. Wasn't this silence a form of response? Now it seemed that the Nine Li's holy maiden wasn't exaggerating at all when she said that Shui Mo was nearly beaten to death. It was true, and Shui Mo was still in critical condition. His life and death were unknown. For some reason, Yi Zichen thought back to everything he'd gone through with Shui Mo. Most likely, he joined anti-upheaval because Shui Mo had coerced him into it. At the time, his crystal card was in her hands. Afterwards, it was time to recruit new members for the society. In order to carry out Shui Mo's orders, he transformed into an excavator. At that point, the way Yi Zichen saw it, the woman was very sly and shameless. She'd tossed him the priceless 10,000-year black jade without so much as batting an eye. When they faced the subterranean beast, she'd used her body to block a fatal blow for him. In the end, she'd even laughed and scolded him. Can't you be more serious? If you die, I'll be in deep trouble. Afterward, she'd completely disregarded her own injuries and left him a pill. Then, with her dagger in hand, she glared at Yi Zichen with her fiercest gaze. Then, there was her determination to save Murong Shui and Jiang Yong. When they were trapped in the sea of beasts, Yi Zichen took the initiative to stay behind and bring up the rear. Compared to being trapped in the sea of beasts, Shui Mo was far more anxious and desperate to find Yi Zichen. That was because he believed that Yi Zichen would definitely bring people to save him. In short, she was cunning and willful, like most girls, but also hot-blooded and responsible. Yi Zichen had long since viewed her as a brother. He'd even thought of pulling her over to be the deputy leader of the Upheaval Alliance once it was over. Then, he'd use his position as the leader to suppress her and get his revenge. Someone had almost beaten him to death. Ha! Who did it? What's going on? Tell me. The crowd remained silent. The way Jiang Wei and the others saw it, all they could do was wait in silence. But they'd forgotten that Yi Zichen had the Nine Li's holy maiden by his side. Even if they didn't say anything, I'll talk. To everyone's surprise, the one to speak up wasn't the holy maiden, but rather Murong Shui. Murong Shui's eyes were bloodshot. She'd truly been tormented these past few days. Now that Yi Zichen knew the truth of the matter, she felt sorry for not being able to keep Shui Mo's secret. However, a raging fire burned in her heart. The fire of vengeance. She'd watched helplessly as that person beat Shui Mo to the brink of death. She'd watched as that person grabbed Shui Mo by the head and threw her to the ground, his eyes filled with disdain. She hated herself for being so weak and powerless. She hated that she couldn't avenge Shui Mo herself. Her emotions had been so complicated. While she blamed herself, she'd hoped someone would be able to kill that bastard. Even now, that was the case. Before Yi Zichen found out, she'd done everything in her power to hide everything from Shui Mo. But now that he knew, what do you want to hear? I'll tell you everything. Everything? All right. Murong Shui didn't hesitate. Despite everyone else's objections, her eyes flashed with fury, and she clenched her fists. During the 4th round of the Battle of Geniuses, we were assigned to a secret realm. There is a great treasure in the mystic realm, a sword. Murong Shui didn't bother to disguise anything. She told them everything that had happened. The general gist of it was that whoever remained in the secret realm would get the sword. In the end, 3 people remained. 2 of them were Murong Shui and Shui Mo, while the third, his surname was Bai Yulong. At the time, Murong Shui was heavily injured. Shui Mo was worried about her safety, so she crushed the talisman for her. She and Bai Yulong entered the finals. Prior to the finals, Bai Yulong had never revealed any of his true strength. Practically no one paid him any attention. Shui Mo and the others even wondered how he'd made it to the finals. But in the finals, he'd shown everyone what it meant to be overwhelmed by fear. The finals lasted 10 minutes, and the two of them had only fought for 5. Or perhaps it was more accurate to say that Shui Mo had been one-sidedly crushed. 5 minutes. Shui Mo even activated the power of her bloodline, but she'd still been beaten black and blue. She tried to crush the talisman several times, but Bai Yulong restrained her every time. He wouldn't let her withdraw. He left Shui Mo. Chapter 1397. The holy demon body reappeared. In the end, Lady Xian Ji personally stepped in to stop the competition. I'll never forget how arrogant he was, how he grabbed Mo Mo's head, then slammed her to the ground. That condescending, disdainful look in his eyes. I'll never forget how he used every method at his disposal to torment Mo. I want to avenge Mo, but I'm not strong enough. Yi Zichen. If you can avenge Mo, kill that Bai Yulong yourself. I, Murong Shui, am willing to serve you for the rest of my life. I'm willing. Murong Shui knelt on the ground, tears streaming down her face. Even Jiang Yong and the others, who'd wanted to stop her, gritted their teeth and turned their heads away when they heard what she'd said. They didn't say a single word. They'd seen it with their own eyes. They'd watched the divine martial tournament's screen of light. At that time, their hearts were burning with monstrous anger. They all wanted to kill Bai Yulong to vent their hatred. However, when they thought of the vast gap in cultivation between them, they forcefully swallowed their resentment. They clenched their fists and glared resentfully at Yi Zichen's arrogant eyes. If they were strong enough, they wouldn't be able to completely suppress Bai Yulong. Even if they were as strong as him, they wouldn't hesitate to disregard the rules of the Battle of Geniuses and fight him to the death. Enough. Yi Zichen coldly cut her off, his anger rising. She'd said so much, but Yi Zichen only heard a few words. Disdain. Torture. At the end of the day, Bai Yulong had only tortured Shui Mo. He hadn't taken her life because he disdained her. When Shui Mo activated her bloodline power, there was no way he didn't know she was a member of the Shui family. But he'd done it anyway. It was obvious he'd done it on purpose. Furthermore, his torture showed that he wasn't afraid of the Shui family at all. So long as he closed his eyes. He recalled how Bai Yulong had tortured Shui Mo in the secret realm. She'd begged for death, but she couldn't. Ha! Ha ha! Yi Zichen covered his face, his veins bulging. Through the slits between his fingers, he could see his pitch-black eyes, which radiated a devilish smile. What a Bai Yulong! What disdain! The aura around his body became extremely turbid, and the surrounding space seemed to be distorted. A purplish-red, steam-like aura gushed out from his pores. Vaguely, the shadow of a demon appeared behind him. His back also seemed to grow flesh wings that protruded outward. His pupils turned purple, emitting a terrifying purple glow. Everyone in the room was shocked by Yi Zichen's change, especially Xiao Yumei, who stood beside him. This was the aura of a demon. Only the Holy Virgin of the Jili tribe, who was not far away, raised her eyebrows and smiled gently. In the blink of an eye, a room large enough to hold dozens of people was filled with reddish-purple steam. Jiang Yong and the others shuddered at the sight of those devilish eyes. Brother Yi. Jiang Yong gulped, suppressed his trembling heart, and looked Yi Zichen in the eye. Don't be rash. Shui Mo is heavily injured, but she's not dead yet. Great Emperor Shuiyang has already taken her to the Sea of Innocence for treatment. Given the Great Emperor's abilities, it's only a matter of time before she recovers. Brother Yi, don't be rash. Whether it's Bai Yulong or the Bai family backing him, you can't handle them right now, said Su Chao. Where there's life, there's hope. You've only been on the Divine Mountains for a few years, yet you're already a half-step diviner. So long as you have enough time, we'll definitely get our revenge. Skyspan student society leaders couldn't help but try to comfort him, but no matter what they said, Yi Zichen didn't respond at all. Jiang Wei, hurry up and tell Brother Yi that Bai Yulong. Brother Yi, go ahead. I support you. To everyone's surprise, Jiang Wei didn't try to dissuade Yi Zichen at all. Instead, his gaze was utterly earnest. As you are, you might really be able to fight him. How come you? Pang Zheng and the others pointed at Jiang Wei, speechless. Then they looked at Murong Shui. They were clearly the ones who didn't want Yi Zichen's lie to be exposed the most, but now that it was exposed, they were the ones so supportive and certain of Yi Zichen's revenge. Are you all crazy? Don't you know what Bai Yulong's cultivation is? Jiang Yong was furious. No matter how much Jiang Yong cursed, Jiang Wei and Murong Shui looked at Yi Zichen with certainty. Murong Shui simply wanted to get revenge for Shui Mo. Jiang Wei, on the other hand, had already considered the situation. Although he didn't want to believe Yi Zichen, he had no choice but to admit. Yi Zichen could fight Bai Yulong. As a fellow swordsman, he was keenly aware of the importance of an enlightened sword heart. Wherever the sword pointed, the heart pointed. Since Yi Zichen had already made up his mind, there was no point in trying to stop him. He might as well let Yi Zichen do as he pleased. The only thing that left Jiang Wei exasperated was that he'd never guessed the gap between him and Yi Zichen would be so vast. But that didn't matter. He'd catch up eventually. Yi Zichen covered his face and laughed. His hysterical laughter made the onlookers' scalps tingle involuntarily. His aura grew stronger and stronger, and the wings on his back were on the verge of bursting out of his skin. Until, boom, a wave of wind swept through the room. A violent gust of wind swept through the room, sending the tables and chairs flying everywhere. Even Jiang Yong and the others in front of the door couldn't open their eyes from the howling winds. They frantically set up seals around themselves and split apart the purplish-red waves of wind. Only then did they see wings. 6 pairs of black and white wings, 12 in total, flapped to and fro on Yi Zichen's back. The howling winds were coming from them. Then they looked at Yi Zichen and judged from his aura. A diviner! He was a demon. Long time no see. Yi Zichen had already removed his hand from covering his face. His words were directed at the wings on his back. He'd almost forgotten. He had a holy demon body. He smiled indifferently, spread his palms, and sensed the changes in his body. Was this what a diviner was like? It was as if he'd become one with heaven and earth. The Tao of all creation was like a fish in water. No wonder only diviners could truly be considered experts of their own. The wings on his back unfurled. They were more than 2 meters long and took up a lot of space. He slowly walked up to Murong Shui, who knelt on the ground and reached out. Yi Zichen's body emanated thick demonic energy. However, as his aura enveloped her, she sensed a purity that could cleanse her soul. Half was unbearably filthy, while the other half was pure and holy. 2 completely incompatible auras appeared on Yi Zichen's body at the same time. Murong Shui was shocked, but she pursed her lips and reached out her hand. Who cared so much? As long as she could avenge Shui Mo, even if Yi Zichen was a demon. Chapter 1398. Demons? Gods? 2 completely different auras swirled around Yi Zichen, enveloping the entire room. Everyone's eyes brimmed with astonishment. As far as they could remember, they'd never seen someone with this kind of bloodline. Then there were the wings on his back. The fallen demon child's wings were pitch black, while the holy light divine child's wings were pure white. They represented the 2 races' supreme holiness and supreme evil respectively. Demon children and divine children rarely met, but if they did, one side would be expelled. But why? The wings of a divine child and a demon child would appear on the same person at the same time. Even so, they could sense the 2 opposing auras clashing, yet Yi Zichen, who'd fused them together, remained unscathed. There was a change. Perhaps it was because his left eye glowed with a demonic purple light. It was evil, cruel, and perfectly embodied all sorts of bad words. But his right eye was pure and bright, righteous and warm, a symbol of all that was good. I already know what you're asking for. Yi Zichen held Murong Shue's hand and smiled warmly. He pursed his lips and carefully wiped away her tears. There's no need to do anything for me. Shui Mo is my best friend. Even if you didn't beg me, I'd avenge her. As soon as he said that, a fierce gust of wind kicked up. When it dispersed, everyone saw that Yi Zichen was already outside. Suddenly, countless sonic booms filled the air. Everyone in the room froze involuntarily. Soon after, they saw it clearly. There was a dense horde of Yao servants from the Yao ceiling pagoda. Some of them even held construction equipment in their hands. However, their expressions were grave. The beautiful woman in the lead, as well as the man and woman half a step behind her, all knelt before Yi Zichen. A lion's head. Their voices filled the air. Behind them, the 20 overseer sovereigns bowed as well. This deafening voice was so loud that anyone within 1,000 miles could clearly feel it. This simple phrase, Alliance Master, was filled with fighting spirit that soared into the clouds. Everyone in the city stopped and looked in the direction of the upheaval alliance. 7th stage Sky Supremes and above, step forward. Rumble. Almost 40% of the demon servants took a step forward at the same time, and the surrounding space seemed to be compressed by their steps, making crackling sounds. Very good. With that, Yi Zichen looked back coldly at the Holy Maiden of the Ninely. Under his gaze, the Holy Maiden of the Jili tribe smiled. With pleasure. She naturally understood the meaning behind his gaze. Of course, she wouldn't refuse to lead the way. A pitch-black streak of light turned into a streak of light and disappeared into the horizon. Yi Zichen waved his arm and followed. The 7th stage Sky Supremes Yi Zichen had singled out followed closely behind. Little did they know, for streaks of light, several times faster than them and second only to Yi Zichen's, streaked through the sky. The crackling sound of something tearing through the air resounded throughout Heavenly God City. As they sped along, the space around them seemed to be torn apart. Shock was inevitable. Even Jiang Yong and the others, who were direct descendants of large family clans, had never seen anything like this before. Dozens of rulers, nearly 10,000 diviners, tens of thousands of Sky Supremes, such a vast and mighty army set out at the same time. Their overwhelming battle intent threatened to tear the heavens apart. Just by closing their eyes, they could sense their killing intent, as sharp as swords. Chaos. Utter chaos. They were certain that once Yi Zichen left, the God realm would fall into chaos. His actions could be described as pulling a single hair and affecting the rest. The profound pavilion, the star altar, the sea of innocence, the hermit palace, the jade lake. They'd all chosen their sides. On this day, the God realm's territory, which had been like stagnant water, would be stirred into chaos. You too. Jiang Yong was called a brute. Indeed, sometimes he was rash and impetuous. However, when it came to important matters, he was far more meticulous than the average person. For example, when he tried to console Jiang Wei, he could think of all the points others had overlooked and persuade them. Now was the same. He could already imagine the consequences of his actions. However, even though he had a stomach full of complaints, he couldn't say a single word. He didn't know why, but he somewhat understood why Jiang Wei and Murong Shui had done this. In truth, from the bottom of his heart, he wanted to support Yi Zichen's revenge. However, whether it was his cultivation, the faction behind Bai Yulong, or the factions Yi Zichen had implicated, he couldn't allow this to happen. After sighing a few times, Jiang Yong silently shook his head. Contact Beibei and tell her. Yi Zichen's on the move. The Society of Saints, the Star Altar. Yi Rong's 7-star altar. Great Emperor Chao Feng had personally gifted this residence to her after she joined the Society of Saints. This star altar allowed her to better communicate with the stars and draw starlight into her body. Countless Star Lords wanted to stay here for a while longer, but Yirong preferred peace and quiet. She spent most of her days alone in the massive star altar. But today, there were over 100 people gathered in the star altar. Chao Feng had assigned them to her after she joined the Society of Saints. After 100 years of nurturing, they'd all become her confidants. Most of these Star Lords had only one star in their bodies, while a few had two. Some of them had merely drawn in a bit of starlight and had the potential to become saints. Even so, in the outside world, they were sought after by the various clans. A saint's constitution was special. Even a one-star Star Lord could quickly increase his cultivation and comprehend the Tao of heaven and earth by cultivating by her side. I'll ask you one last time. It's not too late to back out. She'd already asked this question 3 times. What she had to do next wasn't exactly rebelling against the God race, but it wasn't far from it. Although these people were her trusted subordinates, she had no right to make decisions for them. Still, none of them backed down. The Star Lords knew exactly what Yirong wanted to do. They also knew what the consequences would be, but they wouldn't back down. Although Yirong seemed difficult to approach, over the past 100 years, as the Lord of 7 Stars, they'd all sensed that she'd nurtured them and appreciated their talents. A drop of water should be repaid in full. There was no need to back down. All right. Yirong looked at her trusted subordinates, who refused to budge an inch. She nodded solemnly. She didn't say anything more and reached out to grab the pure white 7-star robe and draped it over her shoulders. The other Star Lords also followed suit and donned their star robes. Let's go. At Yirong's command, all the Star Lords took to the air. However, before they'd taken more than a few steps, Chao Feng. Yirong stopped in her tracks. Standing in front of her was the master of the star altar, Great Emperor Chao Feng. You want to stop me? Yirong asked. Chao Feng smiled and shook his head. Bringing so few people to see Zhou Wu is a disgrace to the star altar. Chapter 1399. More than 60% of the star altar's Star Lords had been mobilized. They streaked across the sky like stars, heading for Heavenly God City on the central Divine Mountain. However, Great Emperor Chao Feng's decision was only the beginning of this development. Heavenly God City, the Profound Pavilion. The Profound Pavilion's divine generals had always been scattered across the God Realm's divine mountains. Now they were gathered in one place. It wasn't just the divine generals. The cultivators loyal to the Profound Pavilion stood in the front hall like a well-trained army. The Profound Pavilion had 18 divine generals, and 2 of them had joined in the last 100 years. The divine generals stood to the left and right of the front hall. Between them stood a mustachioed man dressed in a grand tutor's robe. Hubatsi. He was Xianji's most trusted aide and most favored person. Hubatsi gripped a jade slip in his hand. He was waiting for news for Xianji's reply. Suddenly, the slip flickered with light. His divine sense probed inside. After a brief silence, his expression became so grave that it made one's chest tighten. "Grandpa Ba, what did Big Sister say?" asked one of the divine generals. Hubatsi didn't reply. He muttered to himself as he stroked his beard. In the end, his gaze fell on the first divine general on the right. "Old wine. How drunk is he?" 70%, said the first divine general on the right. The number 1 divine general on the right spoke up. This person looked especially sloppy, and his face was flushed red from being drunk. That wasn't all. He held a gourd of wine in his hands, and as he spoke, he drank 2 mouthfuls of it. As he spoke, he swayed on his feet, looking like a drunkard. Anyone could go up and give him a punch, and they would be able to knock him to the ground. The divine generals of the Profound Pavilion were ranked according to when they joined. However, this drunkard, who was still pouring wine into his mouth, was not only the first divine general to follow Xianji, but also the first divine general under her command. The God of Wine. He was called the God of Wine, but he didn't drink. It could be said that he didn't touch a drop. But if he did, his strength would be at its most terrifying. Not enough. When he heard the god of wine's reply, Hubatsi furrowed his brows and shook his head. The divine generals in the front hall were all shocked. The god of wine was a peak divine general when he was 30% drunk. At 50%, he found it difficult to find a worthy opponent. Now, at 70%, he could fight a great emperor. Still not enough. Rumble. The god of wine lifted the gourd without hesitation, and the wine within poured into his mouth like a waterfall. Burp. He shook the wine gourd beside his ear a few times. From the sound of it, it seemed like there was only enough wine left in it. He let out a satisfied burp and swayed, almost falling to the ground. Fortunately, he had Optimus Prime behind him, so he didn't fall. How much? Hubatsi said. 90%, burp 90% drunk. Drunken Legend couldn't even speak clearly. The two new divine generals in the front hall were worried that he would die from drinking himself to death. Only then did Hubatsi smile. That should be enough. The other divine generals stared at the god of wine, their eyes filled with terror. They had never seen the god of wine so drunk before. 70% of battle emperors, then 90%, number 3, number 5, number 13, number 18. Here. The divine generals stepped forward at the same time. These were the strongest divine generals under Xianji's command. When they were called out at the same time, everyone had a rough idea of what was going on. The four of you, follow Old Wine to the Bai family's ancestral home. You don't need to do anything, just stay in the vicinity. Don't let anyone from the Bai family come within 15,000 kilometers of Heavenly God City. The Bai family burp. A smile appeared on the god of wine's reddened face, and his eyes shone brightly. Coincidentally, I'd like to see just what kind of person this Bai family patriarch that not even Big Sister can divine is. Whoosh. In a flash, the few divine generals who had been called out also disappeared from the front hall. Number 2, number 6, number 7. Here. Each of you, take 300 diviners and 20,000 supremes. I don't want to see anyone on the streets of Heavenly God City. Yes, sir. The three divine generals received the order at the same time and each led a large group of people outside the front hall, leaving in a grandiose manner. Number 4, number 11, number 12, number 17. Here. Actually, your mission is a bit easier. Hubatsi smiled, and the divine generals couldn't help but smile as well. Then they heard, all you need to do is seize the 4 towers of Heavenly God City. As for how many people you need, you can allocate them as you see fit. The smiles on the divine generals' faces suddenly froze. They stared intently at Hubatsi. Seize the city? I didn't say that, laughed Hubatsi genially. Master Ba, what on earth does Big Sister want to do? Seizing the towers? Isn't that the same as seizing the city? Asked the divine general. Just do it or don't. Why ask so many questions? I'll tell you right now. Big Sister doesn't like Zhou Wu and wants to take Heavenly God City for fun. Are you going to do it or not? Damn it, it's just Heavenly God City. With a shout, the divine generals led their men and charged out. For a moment there were only a few divine generals left in the hall, and less than 10,000 cultivators outside. Hubatsi watched as his brothers left, but the divine generals didn't say anything. Master Ba, then we guard the profound pavilion. If one comes, we'll kill one. If 2 come, we'll kill both. Hubatsi ordered his divine generals to carry out their tasks in an orderly fashion. Men with the profound pavilion's insignia on their chests could be seen everywhere in Heavenly God City. In unquestionable tones, they ordered the cultivators in the city to either return to their residences, taverns, or leave the city. In just 6 hours, Heavenly God City had turned into a ghost town. Not a single person could be seen on the street. Forget humans, not even a fly could be seen flying through the city. After placing the ordinary cultivators under house arrest, the profound pavilion instantly took over the city's defenses. Divine senses intersected with each other, leaving no blind spots. Then, they looked at the 4 city gates of Heavenly God City. At this point in time, the relationship between the God, Yao, and demon races was rather ambiguous. Heavenly God City's city gates were heavily guarded, and practically every one of them was guarded by a ruler. However, tie them up and seal their mouth. Be quick with your movements, ordered the divine general who'd been sent to attack the city gates. The divine general who was sent to attack the city tower shouted. His subordinates were very agile. After sealing the divine pills of the city guards, they tied them up tightly with hemp ropes. Almost all of the city guards of the 4 cities received the same treatment. The only difference was that when they were tied up, the knots were not the same. If the city guards were captured, the city guards would naturally. Chapter 1400. Is it over on your side? The god generals who had completed their missions communicated with the other god generals through their divine senses. Although Heavenly God City was vast, their divine senses were enough to cover the entire city. It's over. The divine generals responded one after another. When they heard that the other party had completed the mission, someone asked again. Is anyone hurt? After a brief pause, the divine generals replied to each other. We don't have any here. We don't have any here either. Us too. Silence. When the last person reported that he was safe, the god generals who were in the middle of their conversation all fell silent. Of course, it was a good thing that no one was injured, but now they were hoping that someone would say that they had encountered some resistance. No. None at all. It didn't matter if it was taking over the city's defenses or taking over the city tower. The divine generals did not encounter any resistance along the way. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. They were just putting on a show, and the entire Heavenly God City was cooperating with them. Neither the God Emperor's estate nor the Lightning Emperor's estate had sent anyone. The divine generals of the profound pavilion couldn't help but feel that it wasn't an easy task to accomplish. It was the calm before the storm. This was seizing a city. Heavenly God City was the foundation of the God race. Even the profound pavilion couldn't seize it so easily. It was too easy. It was a little too relaxed. The divine generals who were sent to attack the city gate tower thought that it would be a fierce battle. They brought all the elite soldiers and made countless strategic arrangements before attacking the city gate. He didn't even use it. The general guarding the city was like a wooden club, and the guards were like cowards without balls. Your mission is much easier now. Suddenly, they remembered what Hubatsi had said to them before they left. At the time, they'd thought Hubatsi was being sarcastic. Looking at it now, it was simple, really too simple, so simple that they didn't know what to do. Compared to other missions, this was too easy for them. To evacuate the crowd, they still needed to communicate with people. When they attacked the city, they would tie up a city general and threaten the city guards verbally. Finished work. If they knew it was that simple, it would be enough for them to head there alone. Big Sis has already predicted this. The divine generals conversed. Hubatsi was the one who'd given them the missions, but the divine generals all knew that it was their big sister who'd given them the missions, Xianji. Hubatsi was just acting as a middleman to help them pass on information. I think so. Big Sister's calculations are flawless. She must have predicted that this would happen. That's why Lord Ba said that. Thinking about it, I'm so ashamed. Looking at the cultivators of the Profound Secrets Pavilion, who were standing guard outside the city, the faces of these god generals, who had fought so hard before the siege, turned red for some reason. But why did Big Sis do that? Did she really fall out with Zhouwu? Who knows? His words silenced the divine generals again. Why do we care so much? If Zhouwu dares to bully Sis, we'll just kill him and be done with it, bellowed one of the divine generals. This voice transmission instantly garnered the approval of many divine generals. If you want to bully Big Sister, then let's fight. Who's afraid of who? I just wonder how Lord Alcohol is doing. Have any of you seen him get 90% drunk? Never seen it. The god generals mumbled. Previously, when Lord Alcohol drank 70%, he beat up a demon monarch until his nose and face were beyond recognition. I really want to see just how drunk Lord Alcohol can get, sighed one of the divine generals. Calm down and guard the city gates. Big Sis definitely has her reasons for having us fight. This matter can't end so easily. As soon as the voice transmission arrived, another voice transmission was transmitted over. Big Sis is here. East Gate. Heavenly God City's main gate. Stationed here was the fourth divine general of the Profound Secrets Pavilion. He was more than 2 meters tall and had a stocky build. His eyes were like copper bells, and his arms were as thick as a young girl's waist. His appearance was wild and wild. This was one of Xianji's divine generals, the god of strength. The god of strength could be traced back to 100 years ago when Xianji broke into the Shao family estate. He'd shattered the Shao family's protective spiritual formation with one punch and charged straight for the dragon. That wasn't all. His sky-ripping divine power was renowned throughout the 3 realms. To outsiders, he'd always been a fiendish god, but to Xianji, from a distance, the god of strength jumped down from the city gate tower. When he ran forward, his footprints could be clearly seen under the watchtower. Big Sis. Even though Xianji was standing in front of him, her height still exceeded his waist. He nodded and bowed, grinning foolishly. You're the one who attacked the East Gate. When she saw that the newcomer was the god of strength, she nodded slightly. She hadn't come alone. Beside her were Great Emperor Shuiyang of the Sea of Innocence, Bian of the Four Directions Palace, Zhao Qianling, the Jade Lake Palace Master, and the Yao Empress, Su Qinyan. Of course, Zhao Qianhe had come as well, but compared to these people's titles, she seemed like an ordinary person. Ocean Emperor, Palace Master, His Majesty, Empress. Even the god of strength felt a little dizzy when he saw this group of people. Xianji greeted them one by one, then smiled. Are the Shen family well behaved? Shen family? The god of strength didn't understand. Aren't the people on the towers I told you to attack the Shen family? Laughed Xianji. Are those people from the Shen family? The god of strength pointed at the guards who'd sealed their own divine pills and were currently tied up by the Profound Secrets Pavilion cultivators. Have they been swapped? Xianji raised her gaze slightly. After glancing at him, she smiled faintly. They sure moved fast. Xianji, there's no need to discuss these trivial matters. We don't have much time right now, said Shuiyang, frowning. You're just a clone. If we really fight, what's the point? Shuiyang was furious. He really had come with a clone. His true body had remained in the river Styx. Previously, he owed Emperor Hades a favor, so he'd left a clone in the Emperor's secondary imperial residence. However, after learning more about the situation, he decided that a clone wouldn't be safe enough, so he sent his true body over. In truth, even if it was just a clone, it was more than enough to guard the Sea of Innocence. But if he were to face off against the people he was about to encounter, this clone really wouldn't be enough. However, he wasn't talking about fighting, but something else. How could he just let this go? Enough. Even if you pull a long face, you can't beat me, sighed Xianji. Anxious? I'm even more anxious than you are, but do you really think we'll make it in time? We came from your Sea of Innocence. Then we have to hurry, said Shuiyang. Don't worry. He's my nephew. I care more about him than you do. Xianji sighed, seemingly exhausted. The god of strength knew this wasn't the time for him to interrupt, but he couldn't restrain his curiosity. Big sister, why are you doing this? I know what you're going to ask, but don't ask. Xianji cut him off, then narrowed her eyes. Just remember what I'm about to say. Go ahead, big sister, said the god of strength solemnly. Now that we've seized the city gates, don't lose them. Notify the others that no one is allowed to leave the city. From now on, no one is allowed to leave, and no one is allowed to enter. Understood. I'm not done yet. What the hell do you understand? This is the important part. Xian-ji glared at him fiercely. Only the Yao, Fox, God, Four Directions Palace, and Star Altar can enter. Everyone else. Anyone who enters will be killed. The Sea of Innocence and Jade Lake. The God of Strength glanced at Shui Yang and Qianling. Chapter 1401. The God of Strength was born in the wilderness, and his divine strength was awe-inspiring. He was good at strength, but not wise. His thoughts were the same as an ordinary martial artist. He did not have as many twists and turns as a strategist, but after living for so long, even if he was an honest person, he still had some attainments in figuring out people's mind. The Sea of Innocence's Shui Yang and the Jade Pool's Zhao Qianling were standing right in front of the city gate. Since they'd come together under these circumstances, it was obvious that they were allies. To everyone's surprise, Xian-ji flatly denied that they were the subordinates of these two families. However, neither the Jade Lake Palace Master nor the Sea of Innocence's Sea God seemed displeased. Strange. The God of Strength was puzzled by her words. His confusion was not concealed in his eyes. Seeing his expression, Xian-ji maintained her indifferent smile. You don't need to think too much. Just do as I say. The people of the Sea of Innocence and Jade Lake naturally couldn't enter the city. Before they came, they already had a discussion. Since God Emperor Zhou Wu wanted to break the current harmony, he naturally had a complete and meticulous plan. Bai Yulong was a member of the Bai family. Before the Battle of Geniuses, no one knew that there was a Bai family in the God race's territory. After that, the Bai family gradually appeared in everyone's line of sight. Shui Yang, Xian-ji, and the others gradually located the Bai family's main branch. He also knew that the Bai family was one of the forces that God Emperor Zhou Wu had nurtured. Since Zhou Wu had ordered the Bai family to harm Shui Yang's daughter, he definitely planted a large number of spies around the Sea of Innocence. If the Sea of Innocence acted rashly, they'd definitely alert the enemy. Furthermore, if they sent too many troops, they might even lose their holy land. The Jade Lake. The palace master of the Jade Lake, Zhao Qianling, used to be Shui Yang's wife and Shui Mo's mother. Other people didn't know about this, but people at their level generally knew about it. What's more, Shui Mo was the one injured. There was no way Zhou Wu was stupid enough not to go to the Jade Lake and keep an eye on her. As a result, neither the Jade Lake nor the Sea of Innocence could act rashly. However, it was enough for Xian-ji to know. There was no need for her to explain too much to the God of Strength and the others. Understood. Strength God Qi may cupped his fist. All right, we won't stay here any longer. Let's go into the city. What I told you just now, you must tell the other brothers without missing a single word. Don't be presumptuous. If I say it's one, it's one. Understand? The Strength God understands. That's good. After nodding slightly, Xian-ji walked unhurriedly into the city through the east gate. The other powerful beings who had come with him also followed him into the city. In front of the city gates, the God of Strength kept cupping his fists and bowing. Only when they had completely stepped into the city did he shake his head and straighten his back to look at the backs of these almighty beings. What is Big Sister's intention? After muttering to himself for a moment, the God of Strength relayed Xian-ji's instructions to his brothers, who were carrying out their missions in Heavenly God City. Without exception, when these God generals heard the Strength God's narration, they could not figure out what he was thinking. After several fruitless discussions, the conclusion they could come up with was simple and crude. Just follow orders. Since Xian-ji had told them to guard the city gates, they would guard them. If he said no one from the Sea of Innocence or the Jade Lake could enter, then he wouldn't let them in. They might be martial artists, but they didn't know how to strategize. But in terms of divination and strategy, if Xian-ji said she was number 2, no one would dare claim to be number one. They couldn't go wrong listening to Big Sister. Once the profound pavilion's 4 divine generals heard the news, they began to make their preparations. Regardless of whether Heavenly God City had guests or no guests, they couldn't afford to be negligent. Open your eyes wide. The lady has ordered that no one is allowed to leave or enter the city. Anyone who doesn't belong to the 4 Directions Palace or the Star Altar will be killed without mercy. The God of Strength stood in front of the city gates and shouted at the cultivators who had come with him. The cultivators all raised their arms and cheered, their nerves stretched taut as they stood guard at the gates. As soon as he finished speaking, the God of Strength couldn't help but freeze. The Star Altar. Even great Emperor Chao Feng had gotten involved. Lady Providence. Cultivators from the profound pavilion could be seen all over Heavenly God City greeting Xianji. Seeing the empty capital of the God race, the cultivators who had come with them couldn't help but ask this question after a few glances. This city. Right now I'm in charge of it, but I don't know if it'll be like that in the future. Xianji smiled calmly as she swept past the city. When she saw that there was no one but profound pavilion cultivators on the streets, she said, "I'm doing this for their own good. I don't want to hurt the innocent." They all nodded. At that moment, great Emperor Shuiyang's jade slip flashed. In the past, he'd rarely used this sort of communication jade slip. Given his cultivation, he could easily contact people throughout the God race. This time, he'd brought the slip with him precisely because he was worried that Bei Bei would tell him something else. He'd brought it with him to prevent trouble, but to his surprise, the others noticed this as well, but none of them asked. They continued walking shoulder to shoulder with Xianji. Shuiyang, who'd been scouting for news, fell a few steps behind them. When he saw the message, his expression darkened. "All of you stop." At this moment, the person walking in front stopped as well. Shuiyang had already put the slip away. Facing their gazes, he took a few steps forward. "He's already gone." "What?" Zhao Qianhe's eyes widened. She was frantic, but not because she was worried about Yi Zichen's safety. She knew he was the master of the stars. She'd lived through the first era, and she knew how important the master of the stars was to transcend. She also knew she couldn't afford to let anything happen to Yi Zichen. However, his importance was only limited to the third era. She was from the first era, and had transcended long ago. If worst came to worst, she'd just return to the first era. What she cared about was what the Hermit Emperor had said. The old man had said the Master of the Stars could save little Emo. For Shui Mo's sake, she couldn't let anything happen to Yi Zichen. She was so anxious that her eyebrows were on fire, but she didn't expect the others to look indifferent. Even Shuiyang, the one who'd brought up the news, merely furrowed his brows. He didn't seem overly anxious. "He must have gone to the Bai family's branch in Heavenly God City," said Xianji. Bei Bei didn't say. All she said was that Yi Zichen left with the 9 Li Holy Maiden and brought tens of thousands of Yao servants with him, said Shuiyang. "Let's head straight for the Bai family's branch. I doubt they're going to the main branch. If they go there, my people will inform me," said Xianji calmly. "Lady Providence's plans are truly flawless. You've already made such meticulous arrangements on our way here," said Zhao Qianling. "It can't be helped. When working for Zhou Wu, how can I not think things through?" Chapter 1402. When Xianji and the others learned that Yi Zichen might be heading for the Bai family's branch in Heavenly God City, they all rushed over. Empress Su Qinyan and His Majesty Baiyan also sent their clansmen to suppress Heavenly God City. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. At least from the looks of it, things were progressing according to their plans. It was rare that God Emperor Zhou Wu did not live in a thatched hut near the volcano. At this moment, he was standing peacefully in the medicinal garden of the God Emperor's estate, controlling the Tao of rain of the 5 elements and watering the herbs. "Your Excellency, your control of the great Tao of the 5 elements is becoming more and more fluid," said the divine arbiter as she walked in. Humph, I still haven't comprehended the Tao heart of fire. No matter how deep my understanding of the other Taos is, it's useless. Zhou Wu snorted softly and collected the magic rain. Then, he walked to a wooden stool in the courtyard and sat down. With your aptitude, it won't take long for you to condense the Tao heart of fire. Besides, didn't you obtain the method of transcendence from that young man? Hearing this, the God Emperor fell silent for a moment. Then, he said, I did obtain it, but after so long, I keep feeling that transcendence is neither close nor distant from me. It's clearly within reach, but it just can't be reached. I trust you. The divine arbiter smiled. Let's not talk about that. Since you are here, I believe they have already entered the city, said Zhou Wu. We've entered the city. Who are they? Xianji of the Profound Pavilion, Shuiyang of the Sea of Innocence, Zhao Qianling of the Jade Pool, Bian of the Four Directions Palace, and Su Qinyan of the Fox Clan. These people entered the city at the same time. Right now, Heavenly God City is under the control of the Profound Pavilion, and so is the city. Zhou Wu could not help but shake his head. Xianji, oh Xianji, what a waste of my trust in you. Your Shen family should all leave. We've already retreated. They're currently 150 kilometers away from the city. If you need us, we can instantly retake control of the city, said the divine arbiter solemnly. There's no need. So what if we let them play with the city for a while? Zhou Wu smiled nonchalantly. I just didn't expect Bian to be on their side. I thought he wouldn't help either side. Lao Ai had always wanted to become an emperor, but the imperial star never took pity on him. So many years have passed, and the era is nearing its end. It's about time he gave up, said the divine arbiter disdainfully. But don't you think it's a little strange? Speak, said Zhou Wu. Shuiyang's daughter was heavily injured by the Bai families by Yulong, yet Shuiyang and the others were able to hold themselves back. Unfortunately, we deliberately placed the 9 Li's holy maiden by Yi Zichen's side, and they couldn't restrain themselves any longer. What's so special about this youth, that he's worth all these people rushing to Heavenly God City at the same time? I've already thought of that. Back when he told me about the transcendence technique, I was already wondering about his identity. Now, it seems like this young man might. Maybe. He is this era's Lord of Stars. Zhou Wu smiled indifferently, but didn't bother explaining to the divine arbiter what a master of the stars meant. Only the first era knew about the Star Lord. Zhou Wu only knew about him by chance. However, he was still unsure of the specific function of a Star Lord. He did know, however, that the Master of the Stars was especially important to the Third Era, far more important than the God Emperor. Judging from the current situation, the Profound Pavilion, the Sea of Innocence, the Four Directions Palace, the Jade Lake, and the Heavenly Nine-Tailed Fox Clan were all on this so-called Master of the Stars side. After them, who knew how many other factions had allied with them? Zhou Wu had been the God Emperor for 10,000 years. Was he supposed to bow down to the Master of the Stars? That was absolutely impossible. He was the man who stood at the peak of the world. All races should bow before him. Right, the 9 Li's holy maiden and the others. They left the city. Our people deliberately covered them, so Xianji's people didn't get any warning. Good. Tell the Bai family that Yi Zichen went over. Don't kill that Yi Zichen youth. I want him alive. Understood. Zhou Wu's eyes flashed, and he snorted. Let's go take a look as well. If I calculate the time, they should be arriving at the God Emperor's estate soon. Let's chat with our old friends for a bit. After entering the city, Xianji tried to contact Yi Zichen. She didn't know why, but whether it was through divine sense or jade slip, she received no response. When she remembered that Zhou Wu was also in Heavenly God City, she couldn't very well use her divine sense to search for Yi Zichen's exact location. 4 hours later, the sky had already darkened. For some reason, Heavenly God City was much darker than usual. Not a single star could be seen in the sky, and even the bright moon was obscured by dark clouds. Yizichen should be here by now, right? But this city is a bit too quiet. Space isn't trembling in the slightest, and the surrounding energy is very stable, said Zhao Qianhe, gently caressing the sky. The others' expressions darkened. Before they could take more than a few steps, God Emperor Zhou Wu and the Divine Arbiter appeared before them. The others hurrying to the Bai family branch stopped as well. Everyone, why have you all suddenly come to my heavenly God city? Are you all here as guests? Zhou Wu pursed his lips and laughed softly. Oh, that's not right. Why are the guards in the city and the people at the gates all from the profound pavilion? Xianji, don't you have to give me an explanation? Even at a time like this, Zhou Wu could still chat so casually. It was easy to imagine just how shrewd he was. However, his playful smile proved that he'd long since seen through everything. What's there to explain? Can't you tell? Said Xianji. Of course I can tell, but I wanted to hear it for myself. I wanted to hear what you're really thinking. Or perhaps you don't want to talk too much, so I'll summarize it for you. Are you planning to rebel? Asked Zhou Wu. The Four Directions Palace can't afford to bear such a heavy accusation. Bai and took 2 steps forward. We're just weaklings. In order to survive, we have no choice but to stick together. You say we're rebelling? That's as good as killing us. Zhou Wu, you're ruthless enough. What are you talking about, Great Emperor Baiyan? You seized the God Realm's capital. Aren't you trying to rebel? And you say you're weak? Which one of you isn't in charge of a divine mountain? Weak. That's a bit unreasonable, isn't it? Compared to you, we really are weak, said Su Qinyan. The Fox Empress is also involved. Does your Yao Emperor, the Eastern Emperor, know about this? Asked Zhou Wu. So what if he knows? Su Qinyan smiled coolly. As long as you know, isn't that enough? Zhou Wu's expression froze. A threat. Chapter 1403. A threat? If it were anyone else, they'd definitely think they'd gone mad. This was Heavenly God City, and Zhou Wu was the God Emperor of the entire God race. Turning Heavenly God City into his graveyard? What a joke. Yet, Su Qinyan was the one who'd said it. No one doubted her words. She radiated killing intent, and her gaze was resolute. This was no threat. She had accumulated a grudge against God Emperor Zhou Wu for 10,000 years. During that time, she'd spent every day and night thinking about how to kill him. But now, although she'd come to find Yizichen, whenever she saw Zhou Wu, she couldn't suppress her hatred. She might as well settle all her grudges right here and now. Everyone who knew about Su Qinyan and Zhou Wu's enmity sighed inwardly. Back then, Zhou Wu had usurped the 5 elements' great emperor's imperial fate, ascended to the throne, and was worshipped by all races. The one who truly should have been sitting on the throne was dying of depression. Su Qinyan was his wife. How could she not be angry when she saw her husband's murderer? No one spoke up to dissuade her. None of them could stand on the moral high ground and tell Su Qinyan to prioritize the greater good. Perhaps from the moment they'd entered the city, they'd already stood on opposite sides of Zhou Wu. For the sake of the God race's future, they might not fight as soon as they met. But in the end, the rift between them was difficult to mend. They'd be enemies in the future. If Zhou Wu was determined to stand in their way, they wouldn't mind bringing their battle forward. Qinyan, it's been 10,000 years. I never would have guessed you still hate me so much. Zhou Wu shook his head. 5 elements, he's not destined to become emperor. This is his fate. If he'd entered the time corridor before I did, the throne would have naturally been his. No wonder. 2. As Su Qinyan counted down, her aura grew stronger and stronger. The entire city seemed to be enveloped in dark clouds. Countless Heavenly God City cultivators shuddered in fear. Ha! When he saw that Su Qinyan didn't want to talk at all, Zhou Wu shook his head and laughed. His imperial robes rustled, and his gaze subtly shifted to the others. At the same time, the divine arbiter whispered into Zhou Wu's ear. Outsiders had no way of knowing what kind of conversation they had, but the smile in Zhou Wu's eyes grew brighter as he slowly took a step back to make way. Su Qingyan, who was on the verge of exploding, forcibly suppressed her anger. She glanced at Zhou Wu, who had stepped aside and brushed past him. "Everyone, please wait." After taking a few steps, God Emperor Zhou Wu called out to them again. Su Qingyan's aura instantly erupted. She didn't turn around, but 9 snow-white tails appeared behind her. A biting cold snowstorm suddenly appeared in Heavenly God City. In the blink of an eye, all the buildings in the city were covered in a thick layer of snow. The instant the blizzard appeared, the Divine Arbiter took a step forward. A strange fluctuation swept past her and Divine Emperor Zhou Wu's surroundings. The space they were in was completely cut apart. There was no snowstorm around them at all. Xianji, Shuiyang, the Zhao sisters, and Bian all frowned at the same time. "Don't be angry, I never thought of stopping you. I'm just worried about something, and I'd like to verify it with you. If you can dispel my doubts, I can share some useful information with you." Zhou Wu smiled amiably. No one said anything to him, so he just kept talking. "Who exactly is that youth called Yi Zichen? Is he worth all of you? What does that have to do with you?" Su Qingyan turned around, her eyes shining like sapphires. The blizzard continued to howl. Quite a few buildings had already been buried beneath it. The profound pavilion's cultivators took to the air, gathered in groups of 2 or 3, and used their divine power to support a barrier to ensure their safety. When the profound pavilion's cultivators released their divine power, they were like stars in the sky. The light of the barrier illuminated Heavenly God City. Zhou Wu saw it all out of the corner of his eye. When he sensed Su Qingyan's killing intent, he smiled silently and gestured for them to leave. His meaning was clear. He no longer wanted to verify his suspicions, he wanted them to leave. "Let's go." When Xianji and the others heard this, they turned around. Su Qingyan, who had already sprouted her 9 tails, stared at Zhou Wu. She gnashed her teeth, unwilling to move. Zhao Qianhe and Zhao Qianling moved to her left and right respectively and tugged at her forcefully a few times. The others were also communicating with their divine senses, telling him to leave. "Wu Xing, I will avenge you in the future." Gritting their teeth, they turned around and disappeared from the God Emperor's estate. After leaving the God Emperor's estate, Xianji and the others continued on their way to the Bai family branch. God Emperor Zhou Wu's appearance was nothing more than a minor interlude. They hadn't wasted too much time. The Divine Arbiter by the God Emperor's side has most likely condensed a Tao heart for the great Tao of space. Along the way, Shuiyang thought back to the Divine Arbiter's step and transmitted to the others. The others slightly nodded their heads. Their furrowed brows earlier had also sensed that she was extraordinary at that step. It was also possible to condense a Tao heart. Condensing a Tao heart is equivalent to an Imperial Lord. The spatial Tao is a great Tao among the 3,000 Tao arts. It cannot be underestimated. Overlord was the recognition of one's strength. It was a general term. Emperors, Imperial Lords, and Imperial Lords. This was how emperors divided their strength. Emperors were the highest, while Imperial Lords were the lowest. Imperial Lords were the god race's title. Most of them were high-level sovereigns, on the same level as demon gods and Yao kings. The next level was Imperial Lords. They had condensed a Tao heart on top of the Imperial Lord's foundation. Xianji, Shuiyang, and Xiaoting were all Imperial Lords. Although Baian was astonishingly talented, powerful, and had a godhead by his side, he was still only an Imperial Lord. He was only infinitely close to becoming an emperor. Imperial Lords. That was the highest rank a title could bestow. They had condensed more than one Tao heart, and were infinitely close to the peak of the ruler realm. The god, Yao, and demon emperors were all at this level. "A great enemy in the future," said Baian. Everyone acknowledged the Divine Arbiter's strength. However, as she led the way, Xianji's gaze darkened. She'd heard from her subordinates that Yi Zichen had mobilized an enormous force. They weren't far from the Bai family branch, but even now, she sensed no signs of battle. After encountering God Emperor Zhou Wu, she no longer worried about her divine sense being captured. Logically speaking, with so many people around, it should be easy to find them. But she couldn't find them at all. Her subordinates had been ordered not to approach the Bai family's vicinity. Otherwise, she'd be able to get some information from them. Although she had her misgivings, since she was already here, she might as well take a look around. Until... No! When Xianji and the others arrived at the Bai family branch, there was no sign of the vast army Hu Batzi had told them about. There was no one in sight. Chapter 1404. Xianji. Shuiyang and the others looked over. They, too, had sensed that the Bai family branch residence was empty. Never mind Bai Yulong, they couldn't even find a single servant girl or guard. Hu Batzi. The divine sense transmission exploded in Hu Batzi's sea of consciousness. Hu Batzi, who'd been biding his time in the profound pavilion, felt his heart tremble. Before he could respond, Xianji sent him a second transmission. The Bai family branch residence is empty, and Yi Zichen isn't in Heavenly God City. Why didn't you tell me? How is that possible? Hu Batzi was shocked. I'm in the Bai family branch residence right now, but I can't find a single servant girl anywhere. I haven't even seen a hair of Yi Zichen's army. What on earth are you doing? That's absolutely impossible. Hu Batzi was astonished. All 4 city gates are guarded by our profound pavilion's people. If he left the city, he'd definitely fall into their line of sight. They would have told me, but I didn't see him leave. To confirm this, Hu Batzi contacted his brothers in the city once more. Little did he know, Xianji did the same. We've been tricked. Xianji gnashed her teeth. Just now, she'd already asked around. She hadn't seen Yi Zichen's army at all. The profound pavilion cultivators in the city also said that Yi Zichen had headed in the direction of the Bai family branch. They hadn't seen Yi Zichen leave the city gates, and they said he'd headed in the direction of the Bai family. There was only one possibility. The Divine Arbiter had escorted them out. If the Divine Arbiter had condensed a Tao heart, it would have been far too easy for her to sneak Yi Zichen and the others out of the city without anyone noticing. Big Sis Ol Wine sent word. They've arrived at Spirit City. What? Xianji was shocked. She'd already guessed that Yi Zichen and the others had gone to Spirit City, but how could they be so fast? No matter how shocked she was, their top priority was to hurry to Spirit City. That was where the Bai family's main branch was. Just relying on Yi Zichen and the others was like throwing an egg against a rock. Let's go. They've gone to Spirit City. When they returned to the God Emperor's estate, Zhou Wu and the Divine Arbiter were still there. It looks like you all know. Everyone? Zhou Wu said with a smile. It really is you. Xianji gritted her teeth so hard that they creaked. She had always thought that her calculations were flawless, but this time, she really had not calculated. Zhou Wu had tricked her and caused her to stumble. Now that Yi Zichen was in a branch family, everything was under her control. She could take her time. Now the others reacted and looked at the Divine Arbiter next to Zhou Wu. Given her mastery of space, sending Yi Zichen and the others out of the city without being discovered by Xianji's subordinates was a piece of cake. Why are you looking at me like that? I've said it before. If you could dispel my doubts, I would give you a piece of information which would be of particular advantage to you. But you have spoken ill of me. A full hour. That should be quite precious to you, said Zhou Wu with a smile. Creak. Xianji clenched her fists tightly and her eyes reddened. Everyone else's faces were filled with rage. Su Qingyan looked like an arrow knocked on a bowstring. Could it be that you want to fight me here? That will only delay us even more, Zhou Wu said nonchalantly. Let's go. Xianji glared viciously at Zhou Wu, then instantly left the God Emperor's estate. The other major powers weighed the pros and cons of the situation. After a brief hesitation, they left as well. During this time, Su Qingyan and Bai and contacted their subordinate. Their original plan had been to attack Heavenly God City. Now that the location had changed, it wouldn't be easy for them to give orders. Xian Ji directly drove the entire profound pavilion out of Heavenly God City. Just the few of them were enough to put pressure on a branch family of the White Clan. The Fox Clan and Four Directions Palace's subordinates were merely there to intimidate Zhou Wu and prevent him from acting rashly. But now, Yi Zichen was facing the Bai family. His subordinates weren't enough. What he needed to do now was call in everyone he could. He pointed his sword at Spirit City. Zhou Wu smiled as he watched them leave. By now, the snowstorm was gradually dissipating. Only then did the Divine Arbiter open up the space around them. Su Qingyan's breath of ice is getting purer and purer. As the God Emperor looked at the snow-covered city, he waved his sleeves. Several blazing balls of fire swirled around the city like blazing suns. The ice and snow melted into water, then evaporated into steam, which rose into the air. Before long, Heavenly God City returned to its original state. The profound pavilion's cultivators' expressions were piercingly cold. As they retreated from Heavenly God City, their nerves were taut. They were terrified that the fireballs would suddenly fly towards them. However, God Emperor Zhou Wu ignored them after doing all this. All he did was glance at them and allow them to leave Heavenly God City. Only after the profound pavilion's cultivators had left did the God Emperor laugh. We caused such a ruckus, but now, it's quiet again. He'd known this all along, which was why he hadn't paid the profound pavilion any heed when they'd tried to take over the city. Where are the Nine-Tailed Fox Clan and Four Directions Palace? The Nine-Tailed Fox Clan is still lingering in the Yao territory. The Four Directions Palace has already passed by Victoria City, but they've stationed themselves outside. They haven't made a move yet, said the Divine Arbiter. What a pity. They clearly wanted to put pressure on me, but now they're the ones panicking. Zhou Wu snorted. But for Yi Zichen's sake, they're sparing no effort in protecting him. It's clear how important he is to them. I wanted to tell them he wasn't here. They didn't take advantage of the situation in Heavenly God City, and now they've wasted more than 2 hours. Zhou Wu shook his head and chuckled. Where did that youth go? I used the power of space to send them on their way. Based on the time, they should have reached Spirit City by now, said the Divine Arbiter. No wonder they were in such a rush. The God Emperor nodded. Tell your clansmen to leave as well. Forget about Heavenly God City, at least for now. Then the Bai family. We don't need to go. No need, said the Divine Arbiter. But didn't you say you wanted them to capture him alive? That youth brought quite a few people with him. He had 3 imperial emperors, and 1 suspected to be an emperor. There were also 20 rulers, and countless diviners and sky supremes. Even if he fought the Bai family, they could hold out for a while. When the time comes, when the profound pavilion arrives, it'll be difficult for the Bai family. There's no need to say more.